On the night before our wedding, my fiance's wealthy socialite mother sent men to kidnap me that very night. She tossed a card at me, telling me to be smart and beat it on my own. Otherwise, she would dig up my parents' graves. I took the money and left. Because of this, Shen Xinran's personality drastically changed. She didn't follow the family's arrangement for a marriage, but instead turned herself into a working machine. In 3 years, she single-handedly ruined the business of her arranged partner, firmly securing the top position in the Shen family for herself. Then, with nothing holding her back, she dropped hundreds of millions in bounties to dig me out from some corner of the world. Regaining what was lost drove her completely insane. She wanted nothing more than to carve out her heart and present it to me, begging me to look at her just one more time. A Guinness record-breaking wedding of the century. Mountains of luxury watches and supercars. She even knelt until her knees bled just to pray for some concentric padlock. Whether it was for something material or emotional, as long as she heard it could tie me down, she would risk her life to get it. In the 3rd year after our marriage, Xinran got pregnant. I was ecstatic, thinking I could finally have a complete family. But the baby suffered a miscarriage at just 2 months. The pain tore through my heart. I didn't even dare let her go to the baby's first week memorial, fearing she would be even more heartbroken if she saw it. After the funeral, I went back to the hospital to accompany her. But outside the ward, I heard her arguing with her doctor friend. I hurriedly pushed the door open to advise them. But the moment I heard the details clearly, it felt like falling into an ice cave. I froze right on the spot. Sister Xinran, you really can't take this anymore. Next time it won't be as simple as a stillbirth. You might not even be able to get pregnant in the future, and your body will be completely ruined. Shen Xinran leaned against the headboard, her face deathly pale, as she let out a gentle sigh. But I promised Yunjian and Xiaoqiu that Xiaoqiu would be my only child in this lifetime. This is what I owe Yunjian. Her friend's voice was filled with utter disbelief. Sister Xinran, during those 3 years, Xi disappeared. You were like a lost soul. Now that he's back, why are you still tangled up with that body double, taking this kind of drug for him? He's not clean. You couldn't have actually fallen in love with that? Gigolo, right? Shen Xinran remained silent for a moment, her voice carrying an eerie tone. I love Xi, but I also can't let go of Yunjian. Yi is too proper. Occasionally I need to switch things up. Anyway, I don't lack money, so I'll just keep him around. Then what about brother-in-law if he finds out? He will definitely divorce you. The word divorce made Shen Xinran's tone instantly turn cold and dark. I won't let him know. And I will never let him leave me, her friend was still trying to persuade her. But my world was already spinning out of control. Ye Yunjian, that man who approached Xinran by copying me, and was ultimately kicked out of the family in disgust by her. Didn't he disappear 3 years ago? And Xiaoqiu? Xinran clearly told me that he was her uncle's child. How did he become her child with Ye Yunjian? I couldn't stop shaking, my chest feeling as if it were brutally struck by a heavy sledgehammer, so suffocated that I couldn't breathe. So she had been lying to me all this time. I lowered my head, looking at the prayer bead bracelet on my wrist that I got for the baby. A self-deprecating laugh squeezed out little by little from my throat, bitterness coating my entire mouth. Then what about my baby? What did my unborn child even count as? The baby was killed by his own biological mother with her own hands. The agonizing pain of this realization only now densely pierced into my bone marrow, twisting all of my internal organs together. I couldn't help but bend over and dry heave, tears smashing onto the floor completely out of control. I tightly gripped the clothes over my chest, yet I couldn't suppress that wave of bone-deep pain no matter what. The people inside the ward heard the commotion. Shen Xinran ignored her weakness, pushing the door open and rushing out to hold me tightly in her embrace. It's okay, Yi. Since the baby is gone, we can just have another one. Don't scare me. Her tears dripped onto my neck. They were scalding hot, yet they only made me feel bone-chilling cold. I shoved him away fiercely. Get away from me! My voice was hoarse, and even I could hear the sheer disgust in it. Shen Xinran looked at his now empty arms and froze. I had already closed my eyes, refusing to look any longer. This face of his that I had loved for 10 years felt so unfamiliar right now that it chilled my heart. He once suffered from depression because of my departure and then developed separation anxiety upon my return. anxious to the point where, even if we were in the same room, he had to repeatedly confirm it wasn't a dream. I will always remember the night we reunited. I was startled awake by his movements, only to open my eyes and see his hands covered in blood. I was scared out of my wits. But he tightly hugged my waist and murmured, "Ah, ye don't be scared. I was just afraid this was a dream. Thank goodness, after cutting myself so many times, you didn't disappear. Thank goodness." Yet it was this exact man who once loved me more than life itself, who still had someone else in his heart. Since he can't let go of Ye Yunjian, I'll grant their wish. That night, taking advantage of Shen Xinran's absence, I contacted a lawyer to draft a divorce agreement. Next, I dialed that number that had been buried, for 3 years. Auntie Shen, I agreed to divorce Xinran. I don't want a single penny of the money. I only need you to do me a favor. On the other end of the line, my former future mother-in-law sneered. So the gold digger actually has a day where he doesn't care about money? Spit it out, what favor? I heard my own voice, calm without a single ripple. If you don't want your daughter to search the whole world like crazy for me again after I leave, then help me fake my death to completely cut off her thoughts. Mother Shen fell silent for a few seconds, answering crisply and neatly, "Fine. You better really beat it. If you're playing hard to get, I'll make that fake death real. I won't play hard to get. This time, I really don't want to love Shen Xinran anymore." Perhaps sensing that my mood wasn't right, over the next few days, Shen Xinran pushed away all his work, dragging his sick body to carefully cater around me, trying every trick to make me happy. On the day I was discharged, he even booked out my favorite restaurant, elaborately decorating the whole place with roses. Halfway through the drive, his phone started ringing like crazy. The moment he saw the caller ID, his expression changed instantly. With a sudden slam on the brakes, he pulled the car over. The moment the call connected, from the other end came a man's sobbing voice. "Ah, Ran, save me. Boss Wang drank too much and insists on taking me away." The call cut off abruptly. Anxiety instantly flooded Shen Xinran's face. Without even a second thought, he reached out and unbuckled my seatbelt, pushing open the car door on my side. "Ah Yi, there's an emergency at the company. Get out first and take a cab to the restaurant to wait for me. I'll be there right after I handle this, okay?" I didn't move, just silently looking at him. In the depths of his eyes, there was only unhidden urgency and rushing, without even a shred of apology or explanation toward me. That weak, ridiculous sliver of hope in my heart was completely extinguished. "Shen Xinran," I heard my own completely flat voice. "It's raining outside." Only then did he seem to suddenly remember, a flash of annoyance passing through his eyes. He hurriedly took off his jacket and stuffed it into my hands for me to wear. "My board of directors is rushing me like crazy. Love you, love you." Before the words even fell, he gave my face a perfunctory kiss, but his hands forcefully shoved me out of the car. The brutal actions and the gentle words formed a contrast that was blindingly sharp. Before I could even stand firm, he stepped on the gas, and the car sped away. The momentum caused me to stumble and fall, my forehead slamming heavily onto the damp, cold ground. Muddy water instantly pouring into my mouth. The pain from my forehead was nothing compared to the dead silence in my heart. That expensive women's suit jacket lay all alone in the rain puddles. My heart also sank down to absolute freezing point. Only after quite a while did I slowly crawl back up, not even going to pick up that jacket, just giving it a calm glance. Cabs are exceptionally hard to catch on rainy days. I was drenched in the rain for a whole hour before finally arriving at that fully booked restaurant. The restaurant was completely empty. As expected, he broke his promise. Wearing my soaked clothes, I sat amidst the carefully arranged roses and waited and waited. The rain outside stopped and started and stopped. The person who said he'd come right after handling things never showed up from start to finish. When the rain hammered against the glass window again, I called the waiter over serve the food. The waiter was a bit hesitant. "President Shen hasn't arrived yet. The dishes have been reheated once, so the taste might not be as good as when freshly made." Lowering my gaze, I forced out a bitter smile. "He's not coming." The dishes were quickly served, all of which used to be my favorite flavors. But eating them today, my mouth only felt unbearably salty and bitter. I think I won't like this restaurant anymore in the future. After experiencing immense grief and getting drenched in the rain, I came down with a high fever before even getting home. In my hazy consciousness, I felt a soft hand resting on my forehead. The vulnerability of being sick made me temporarily forget all the wretchedness, instinctively gripping that hand tightly. As I murmured aggrievedly, Shinran. Waking up the next day, I suddenly flung that hand away, only to hear a terrified voice, "Sir, did I wake you up?" I looked up to see Nanny Zhang, the maid at home. My heart sank violently. I heard my own hoarse, trembling voice. "You're the one who stayed with me all of last night." "Yes, sir." The madam's phone wouldn't go through at all, and she didn't reply to messages either. "You kept holding onto my hand, so I didn't leave." Nanny Zhang asked carefully. "Do you need me to give the madam another call?" Just as I was about to speak, my phone suddenly vibrated like crazy. Opening WeChat, it was a message from Xiao Chu. Hundreds of photos and videos flooded the chat box. The content was absolutely unbearable to look at, all showing Shen Xinran and Ye Yunjian's wild night together. From the foyer to the balcony, they were intimately entangled the whole night. He had long forgotten his promise to have dinner with me. I even suspected that even if I had died of sickness at home last night, he wouldn't have come back. I only took one glance before shutting off my phone. "No need," I let out a weary sigh. "Help me bring up the delivery package at the door." That was the already drafted divorce agreement sent by the lawyer. "I think it's time to sign my name." I took the agreement to the Shen group, but I never expected to see Ye Yunjian at the company's front desk. I frowned, not wanting to pay attention to him, and walked straight inside. But as I took a step, I was blocked by his outstretched hand. "Hello, do you have an appointment?" "You can't go in without an appointment." Ye Yunjian had a textbook professional smile on his face, but I could still clearly see the deliberate troublemaking and smugness in his eyes. My expression turned cold. "Ye Yunjian, the whole company knows who I am. Are you sure you want to block me?" Ye Yunjian's smile deepened even more, carrying unhidden mockery. "So what if you're the CEO's husband? He still won't even bear you a child. Gave you 3 whole years and you still failed to deliver. How does it feel to have no descendants?" Before his words even finished falling, my fist had already brutally smashed into his face. "With a mouth this filthy, you're only fit to work at the front desk." Ye Yunjian covered his cheek. After the shock passed, he actually let out a low laugh instead. "Did I strike a chord? Are you mad from embarrassment now? See, let's win by our own skills. Don't even think about entering today." Security... Before the security guards could even arrive, Shen Xinran walked out of the elevator with a displeased look on her face. Before she even reached us, her cold voice arrived first. "Ye Yunjian, did you eat the employee handbook? The very first rule states who is allowed to come and who isn't. Do the job if you can, and if you can't, beat it as early as possible." After saying that, she quickly walked over to my side, sizing me up with worry. "Ayi, he didn't hurt you, right?" Right after her brows furrowed tightly. "It's still raining outside. Why did you come out wearing so little? What if you catch a cold?" Her tone carried that familiar blame, blaming me for not taking care of my body. This scene made the jealousy and hatred in Ye Yunjin's eyes almost spill out. He merely lowered his eyes, silently stepping aside without saying a single word. I didn't speak either. My gaze locked fixedly on that small ambiguous red mark on the side of Shen Xinren's neck. After watching it for a long time, I couldn't help but chuckle out loud. After laughing, the corners of my eyes turned red. "Shen Xinran, your concern acts so real, but what's the point?" I turned my body to dodge her hand that wanted to link arms with me. Taking a step ahead toward the elevator. "It's nothing. Let's go up. The elevator is here." But Shen Xinran's footsteps didn't move. "Ayi, I have an appointment with a partner to discuss a contract this afternoon. Go to the office and wait for me first. I'll come back to find you right after I finish the discussion." "Okay, love you." Another wait. How long do I have to wait this time? Countless questions surged in the depths of my heart, but in the end, only a deep sense of powerlessness remained. I heard myself give a flat, without any ripples. Shen Xinran seemed a bit surprised that I was so easy to talk to today, but she didn't think too much of it, merely assuming I hadn't recovered from the pain of losing our child. She considerately waited for me to enter the elevator, guarding the elevator door until it closed before turning to leave. The elevator slowly went up, but I waited for a long time without it stopping. I pressed the button for the top floor but got no response. Only then, remembering that Shen Xinran didn't give me an elevator card. I had no choice but to step out, wanting to send a message to ask her to have her secretary pick me up. Just as I stepped out of the elevator door, from the adjacent emergency exit stairs, a familiar voice came out. Shen Xinran's tone carried a gentle softness meant to please. Are you angry? Didn't I tell you not to go and mess with him? Why won't you listen? Next was Ye Yunjin's voice carrying a spoiled and aggrieved tone. Darling, I'm jealous. And he hit me first. It hurt so bad. How do you plan to compensate me? Shen Xinran let out a chuckle. That sound was like an icicle, instantly piercing straight through my heart. Then I'll compensate you with my whole lifetime. Okay, and then we'll birth an entire soccer team. Ye Yunjin smiled coquettishly and didn't speak. Next, the faint sounds of clothes rubbing and kissing came out. I stood in the shadows, my entire body freezing cold. Compensate you with my whole lifetime. These words sounded so familiar. At that grand wedding, after regaining what was lost, she had also said the exact same thing. The female head of Jingbei's most powerful Shen family humbly knelt down to me in front of all the guests, choking up and becoming incoherent. Yi, the fortune teller, said, "The concentric padlock requires my lifespan as the price to ensure the one I love never leaves. I am perfectly willing. I'll give my whole lifetime to you. Are you willing to stay by my side life after life?" At that time, she cried so hard her whole body shook, unable to even hold the ring steadily. She said she didn't want to give love that was just empty promises, and that it would be proven on the day the final verdict is cast on our lives. But now it has only been 3 years. Yet she has abandoned me countless times for a gigolo. I clenched my teeth and closed my eyes, but tears still fell down Shen Xinran. Your final verdict is truly ridiculous. Listening to the increasingly unbearable sounds in the passage, I turned around decisively without taking another glance. Later, the secretary picked me up and brought me upstairs. This time, before night fell, Shen Xinran finally came back. Seeing the document bag in my hand, she smiled and asked, "What did you bring?" As she spoke, she naturally reached out to take it. "Want to buy something? Just take my stamp from the study and stamp it. You don't need to look for me specifically. Don't tire yourself out." With red eyes, I spoke calmly, "Not this time, because this is a divorce agree." Before my words could even finish, the office door was pushed open. President Shen, Ye Yunjian, has prepared everything on the rooftop. We can go up now. Shen Xinran had just flipped to the first page of the contract, but hearing this, she didn't even look and directly flipped to the last page, signing her name with a flamboyant flourish. My explanation was blocked back. Forget it. She'll find out sooner or later. I took back the agreement. Go do your work. I'm leaving too. Just as I finished packing my things, my wrist was suddenly grabbed by her. Don't be in such a rush, she dragged me, her eyes sparkling. Come with me. By the time I reacted, I had already been brought to the rooftop terrace of the building. The night breeze was slightly cool. Yi, she tightened her grip on my hand, her tone carrying a comforting vibe. Ye Yunjian was introduced by a company veteran, so it's hard for me to just kick him out directly. You're mad about this afternoon, but he knows he was wrong. So he specifically bought fireworks to make it up to you? She turned her head to look at me, sparks in her eyes. I remember, haven't you always wanted to see a fireworks show? I froze. That was a New Year's wish I made on New Year's Eve, during our first year of dating. It has already been a whole 9 years. My mind went hazy, as if I saw that girl from back then again, the one whose eyes were completely full of me. The next second, Ye Yunjian's voice pulled me right back to reality. President Shen, then I'm gonna start lighting them. Shen Xinran nodded, holding my hand tightly with one hand, while her other hand, as if performing a magic trick, pulled out a simple cupcake. That kind of cupcake was tiny, cheap, and could even be called low quality. Yet it was the deepest memory of my childhood. Before my mother passed away, she would bring me one every time she came home. Later, when mother left, I never ate it again, nor could I find a place to buy it. Now, just to make amends for Ye Yunjian, this cake that had long ceased production, and even the open flame strictly banned on the building's rooftop, Shen Xinran had settled all of it for him. She was probably terrified that I would go trouble Ye Yunjian afterward. The corner of my mouth pulled into a mocking arc. Just as I was about to reach out to take it and say thank you, suddenly from the side, an exaggerated scream came from Ye Yunjian. I clearly felt the hand Shen Xinran used to hold me loosen its grip by a few fractions. That unspoken thank you and thank you instantly froze in my throat. With an expressionless face, I actively let go of her hand, go check on him. Before the words even fell, due to Ye Yunjian's blunder, that row of fireworks toppled over toward the direction where we were standing. The launch ports pointing right at us. Shen Xinren's eyes flashed with shock. Watch out. She shoved me away violently and then took large strides forward, shielding Ye Yunjian tightly beneath her body. That cupcake was stepped on by her in the chaos, instantly deformed under her foot. And as for me being shoved so forcefully by her, I tripped over something unknown and fell heavily to the ground. My wrist made a crisp, cracking sound the moment it hit the ground to support me. The piercing pain caused me to break into a cold sweat instantly. Before I could even check my injury, the exploding firework sparks shot straight into my left eye. My eyeball felt as if it were being burned by fire, the intense pain making me unable to even let out a scream. I frantically fumbled for my phone to call for emergency help, but one after another, the fireworks landed on my body, burning up a patch of blisters and scorching my clothes to tatters. In the panic, my phone was dropped somewhere unknown. The fear brought by the darkness and burning pain completely gripped me. While enduring the intense pain, I fumbled around to back away, distancing myself from the fire source, while simultaneously trying to find the rooftop door. Suddenly, my hand brushed against a warm body. At that moment, like a dying person grasping at a piece of floating driftwood, I deathly gripped the person's pant leg. Even though I tried my best to calm myself down, my voice was still shaking uncontrollably. Shinran, is that you take me with you? I can't see. But before my words even fell, the person in front of me forcefully pulled their leg back. That familiar voice sounded ice cold at this moment, like a death sentence. Yi Yunjian's hand got scraped. I'm going to take him out first. Find a safe place and wait for me. I'll be right back. A wave of heat brushed past my cheek. Even though I couldn't see, I could still feel the wall of fire closing in on me. I frantically reached out my hands, blindly grabbing toward the direction of the voice. Don't Shen Xinran. I can't see. Take me with you. But my outstretched hands only managed to catch a fleeting corner of her clothes. The sound of rushing footsteps quickly faded into the distance, without a single shred of reluctance, as if trampling my very last sliver of survival to pieces. That phrase, wait for me, had become an empty promise once again. In fact, I should have stopped having expectations for her long ago. But at this kind of life and death crisis, being abandoned once again without any hesitation still made my heart tremble with pain. I shook my head, forcing out a bitter smile. I laboriously used my elbows to prop up my body, enduring the intense pain in my bleeding eyes as I relied on my memory to nudge bit by bit toward the rooftop door. Just as I felt the door frame, because I was completely blind, my foot suddenly stepped into empty air. A sensation of weightlessness hit me, and I tumbled straight down along the stairs. The moment the back of my head slammed against the hard floor, I lost consciousness. When I woke up again, a thick layer of gauze covered my eyes, the piercing pain still remaining. Just as I wanted to raise my hand to feel it, my hand was tightly grabbed by someone. Yi, you're awake. How do you feel? Does it still hurt? Do you want me to call a doctor? Shen Xinran's barrage of anxious inquiries came crashing down, yet my heart remained completely dead. I forcefully pulled my hand back, my voice flat, with an unsuppressible disgust underneath. Get out. Shen Xinran froze for a moment, her tone turning guilty. Yi, are you blaming me for not saving you first? Listen to my explanation. At that time, Yunjian was so scared he had an anxiety attack. Staying there could have been life-threatening for him, so I was in a rush to take him away first. After dropping him off downstairs, I immediately went back. But when I got back, I only saw you lying on the floor. Yi, I'm sorry. I really didn't know about your eyes. Yodari. Her words were sincere, and she even started to choke up. But I had absolutely no reaction because I knew she didn't come back at all. My throat bobbed a few times as I nodded calmly. I know. I'm tired. Please go out first. No blame, no questioning. Yet Shen Xinran seemed to panic even more. She forcefully grabbed my hand once again. Yi, don't be mad at me, okay? Those people who sold the low-quality fireworks and hurt you, I've already made them pay the price. They won't think about getting out for the rest of their lives. In the future, I won't let anyone hurt you again, including myself. This time, it was all my fault. You can punish me however you want, just don't be like this. But hearing this only made me want to sneer. Has she hurt me any less? Whether it was the fireworks that were low quality this time, or if the person who bought them had ulterior motives. She knew it perfectly well in her heart. Yet she chose to gloss over it to protect Ye Yunjian. Since that's the case, what else is there left to say? I pried her fingers open one by one, retracting into the blanket as I turned my head away. I'm sleepy. Her palm was empty once again, and Shen Shinren's gaze darkened, her tone carrying a hint of impatience. Ah Yi, I've already explained it. What else do you not believe? Those people all went to jail and you're still not satisfied. If you don't like this way of handling things, then tell me, what exactly do you want? Before she could even finish speaking, I suddenly sat up and interrupted her, no longer able to control my low growl. Fine, then let me tell you. Ye Yunjian is the real culprit. I want you to send him to jail too. Do you dare? As my roar faded, the ward fell into a deathly silence. After a long while, I let out a sneer, realizing I had humiliated myself once again. A warm liquid seeped out from beneath the gauze. My eyes were probably bleeding again. I eased my breathing, not wanting her to notice. But Shen Shinran furrowed her brows tightly, filled with utter confusion. So you're angry because of this. But Ah Yi, no matter who it was that day, I would have saved them first under those circumstances. What does this have to do with whether it's Ye Yunjian or not? Suddenly, I felt everything was truly meaningless. It was just my own petty mind. I lay back down, pulling up the blanket. Can you please go out? My attitude left her momentarily speechless. She looked at my face covered in gauze. A face so calm it was practically indifferent. A flash of something unusual crossed her eyes, yet she couldn't grasp what it was. She opened her mouth. Ah Yi, I didn't mean it that way. But I gave no further response. She let out a helpless sigh, tucked the blanket in for me, and turned to leave Ah Yi get some good rest. I'll come back to accompany you after I finish my work. The moment the sound of the door closing rang out, my phone vibrated as well. It was a message from Mother Shen. The arrangement is in 1 week. When the time comes, you better disappear immediately. Don't play any tricks. I chuckled softly and replied via voice message, don't worry. I will disappear as promised, and we shall never meet again. Just as the message sent, the ward door was slammed open with a bang. What do you mean never meet again? Shen Shinran had turned right back around, her face tense and rigid. My heart skipped a beat and I quickly turned off the screen. It's nothing. Just a friend I cut ties with, saying we'll never meet again. Shen Shinran's brows were tightly knit, her face written with distrust. But in the end, she didn't press further. Except for the next 3 days, she guarded my bedside without leaving a single step, feeling insecure and walking on eggshells just like when I first came back 3 years ago, careful and anxious. But my heart had already gone cold. To all of her actions, I only offered a flat and indifferent response. Shen Shinran felt an inexplicable panic and wanted to talk to me. But on the day I was supposed to be discharged, she suddenly went off the grid. I didn't ask questions, handled the discharge procedures alone, and went to find the lawyer, handing him the signed divorce agreement and the power of attorney. Then I went home to pack my things. In truth, there wasn't much to pack. I just wanted to take a few keepsakes left by my parents. Just as I finished organizing the items, the bedroom door was violently pushed open with a loud slam. The missing Shen Shinran stood at the door, her face flushing with rage. And without a single word, she gave me a fierce shove. CI, why did you do this? I explained to you long ago that Ye Yunjian was introduced to the company by someone else, and saving him last time was out of necessity. He was so terrified because of his mistake that his anxiety triggered and he's hospitalized. Why did you still have to go find trouble with him? The photo frame in my hand fell to the ground with a clatter. What are you talking about? I was completely baffled. My icy attitude only made the fury in her eyes burn hotter. She slammed a stack of photos fiercely against my body. Stop pretending. Just for that little matter from 2 days ago. Just for that ridiculous competitive ego of yours. You'd even resort to such low-life, dirty methods. See, I really want to ask you, when did you become such a person with absolutely no bottom line? Dazedly, I picked up the photos, and with just one glance, I understood everything. So the reason she went off the grid was because something happened to Ye Yunjian? In the photos, Ye Yunjian was being harassed by that notoriously disgusting guy in our social circle. Boss Wang, who is notoriously vulgar, took him away and tortured him for 3 days and 3 nights. A gigolo stamp was branded onto his body, and all kinds of unbearable nudes were taken of him. By now, this set of photos has probably spread everywhere. So Shen Xinran is certain I did it. No, not just certain, she firmly believes it. I let out a sneer, tossed the photos aside, and looked straight back at her. Shen Xinran, are you suspecting me? Deep disappointment filled her eyes. Who else could it be but you? Ye Yunjian only did that job in the past because he was forced by survival? He went clean 3 years ago, and for the past 3 years, no one ever dared to cause him trouble. But now he was openly and statefully taken away, without your instructions. I can't think of a second person. Her absolute tone made me feel a wave of deep powerlessness. She said it herself. Ye Yunjian went clean 3 years ago. But did she forget that I also just came back 3 years ago? If I hadn't overheard the conversation between her and her friend, I wouldn't even know what Ye Yunjian used to do. Now, without a shred of evidence, she just splashes this dirty water onto my head. My eyes instantly grew hot and wet. All the grief and anger accumulated during this period exploded at this very moment. A crisp slap landed right across Shen Xinran's face. The numbness from my palm traveled straight to my heart. I clenched my fist, pausing repeatedly to compose myself before speaking again. Shen Xinran, you are truly shameless. Whether you believe it or not, this has nothing to do with me. After saying that, I squatted down, picked up the photo frame and luggage from the floor, and was about to leave. But my wrist was deathly grabbed by an even greater force. See ye? She had never looked at me with such eyes before. It was as if a storm capable of destroying everything was gathering in her eyes, even hinting at murderous intent. Then let me ask you, after you finished your discharge procedures today, why didn't you come home, but instead went to the Jingyuan neighborhood where you've never been before? Do you know, that was exactly where something happened to Ye Yunjian. She roared, the corners of her eyes turning red from rage. When Ye Yunjian was sent to the hospital, he was already unconscious. Yet his mouth kept repeating, "See ye? Please spare me." Ah, Yi. It's not like you don't know what kind of person Wang Qinglan is. Even if you hate him, you shouldn't resort to this kind of dirty method, right? She dragged me and walked outside, her nails digging deeply into my flesh. You must go apologize to him and give him an explanation. A burst of sharp pain came over me. I forcefully flung her hand away. Shen Xinran, I will say this for the very last time I didn't do it. Have you never considered that this might be a show directed and acted out by himself? Shen Xinran stopped her footsteps abruptly. The look in her eyes as she turned to me was one of utter cold despair. Her lips trembled, and only after a long while did she suppress her anger, saying word by word, "See ye, you crawled up from the bottom yourself? How can you speculate about others like this, just because you've been a wealthy family's son-in-law for a few days? Have you forgotten that you used to be a helpless orphan too?" The more she spoke, the more agitated she became, her voice raising uncontrollably, her eyeballs trembling as she stared at me. I'm actually starting to suspect now that what the fortune teller said back then was right. You really are a jinx who will curse everyone around you to death. These words were like a poisoned icicle, brutally stabbing straight into my heart. Cursed jinx. This was the nightmare of my entire childhood, just because of these 4 words. After my parents passed away, my relatives kicked me around like trash, and my classmates avoided me like the plague. I almost died on a freezing rainy night. Just when I couldn't hold on anymore and wanted to end it all, it was Shen Xinran who found me. It was him who told me that everyone has their own fate, unrelated to one another. It was him who told me that my parents went to heaven to better protect me. It was him who cupped my face, saying word by word that he would use his entire lifetime to break this ridiculous curse. But now this blade that was once personally snapped by him was picked right back up by her to stab me. Tears fell uncontrollably, yet I smiled. The more I smiled, the louder it got. Turns out, even the deepest love is no match for time, and no match for the thrill of novelty. And that inner scale of her heart had long been skewed. Turns out in her mind, I was already such a wretched, malicious, and unscrupulous man. I had no energy left to explain. Straightening my back, refusing to bow my head. Shen Xinran, I won't admit to things I didn't do, much less apologize. Whether he lives or dies has nothing to do with me, and from now on neither do you. After saying that I used all my strength to break free from her grip, wiped the tear stains off my face, and with my head held high pulled open the bedroom door. Just as I reached the main door of the living room, it was shut from the outside. From behind came Shen Shinran's voice, cold as the king of hell. See, since you refuse to wake up, don't blame me for being cruel. Someone come and send the master to the Red Mansion. Whenever he is willing to apologize, that's when we'll pick him back up. My footsteps abruptly froze, almost thinking I had misheard. Shen Shinran, what did you say? The Red Mansion that was the most famous gold-consuming vault in Jingbei, and also a paradise for women. But a hell for men? The men who went in would lose a layer of skin even if they didn't die. She actually wanted to send me to a place like that. I turned back to look at her in utter disbelief, but what I got was her unquestionable, indifferent gaze. Ah Yi, you've really gone too far this time. Her tone was calm, as if stating an irrelevant matter. Since you look down on Ye Yunjian's former profession so much, then go experience it for yourself, and see how he risked his life back then just to survive. Perhaps this way you can learn what it means to be sensible. She looked at me without a single shred of warmth in her eyes, as if looking at a total stranger, and not her precious love regained after being lost, nor her legal husband. The very last spark in my heart was also completely extinguished. I lifted my feet wanting to run, but was deathly pinned down by bodyguards who appeared out of nowhere. No matter how I struggled, it was like an ant trying to shake a tree. By the time I was forcefully shoved into the car, my heart was already numb. I slumped in the back seat like a soulless doll, just staring blankly at Shen Shinran outside the car. Shen Shinran let me go. My voice was very soft, yet it used up the last of my strength. Don't force me to hate. But Shen Shinran merely furrowed her brows, her eyes even revealing lack of understanding and blame. Ah Yi, you have to pay the price when you do wrong things. You can't rely on my love for you to lose your sense of right and wrong. I'm doing this for your own good, just so you don't make a huge blunder in the future. After saying that, she took a step back and stopped looking at me, instructing the driver, Old Lee, drive. The next few days became a nightmare that I could never shake off for the rest of my life. The hierarchy in the Red Mansion was strict, and the people's hearts were twisted. The welcoming ceremony for newcomers was a complete and utter humiliation. On the very first day, I was forced to drink until my stomach bled and was whipped until my skin split open and flesh tore. They said this was the rule. At the very end, a burning cigarette butt was fiercely pressed onto my collarbone, leaving a hideous scar. Some guests recognized me as Shen Shinran's husband, paying a high price to book me not to have me accompany them for drinks, but to put a chain on me and force me to kneel, wanting to pull me along to crawl in the lobby just like walking a dog. I refused, which only brought more brutal punches and kicks. The taste of blood surged up my throat wave after wave. Just when I thought I would be beaten to death alive, only then did someone come up to hypocritically advise, "Oh my, calm down. This is the person President Shen specifically gave instructions for. If he's beaten to death, it won't be easy for us to give an account." That guest spat out, "Bah, who doesn't know? Shen Shinran instructed that as long as the person doesn't die, we can play with him however we want. I know my limits get lost." The moment these words came out, everyone's eyes changed. Their last shred of hesitation vanished completely. Even a janitor passing by to clean up could come up and give me a couple of kicks. I escaped twice. Once I had 2 ribs broken from the beating. The next time I was caught, the boss of the Red Mansion personally held a club as thick as a wrist and whipped it down onto my back, one strike after another. I bit through my teeth, swallowing down a mouthful of blood, no longer capable of struggling. Watching the departure date arranged by Mother Shen get closer and closer, I knew I couldn't wait any longer. One last time, when a guest smashed a wine bottle toward me, I didn't dodge. The wine bottle exploded on my head, and fresh blood instantly blurred my vision. An intense pain came over me, and I lost consciousness, getting exactly what I wanted. Waking up again, I was in the hospital. The smell of disinfectant drifted into my nasal cavity. Before I even opened my eyes, I felt an uncomfortable gaze on me. Opening my eyes, the first person I saw was Ye Yunjian, sitting leisurely by the hospital bed, a fake look of concern on his face. And what was even more blinding than his face was that string of emerald green, translucent JDT bamboo beads on his wrist. That was the only keepsake my mom left for me. "Who allowed you to touch my things?" My eyes practically split with rage. I suddenly got up to snatch it back, but it aggravated my wounds, causing me to fall back onto the bed in pain. Ye Yunjin dodged nimbly, playing with the bead bracelet, smiling triumphantly. "You mean this?" I said I liked it. So Aran said she'd give it to me as compensation. Impossible, I roared out without even thinking. No matter how out of line Shen Xinran could be, she also knew what this bracelet meant to me. Ye Yunjian was very satisfied with my reaction, his smile becoming increasingly brilliant. If you don't believe me, you can go ask Aran yourself. Sia, you can't beat me. I advise you to be sensible and beat it on your own. Otherwise, I don't know what else I might do. The moment his words fell, the ward door was pushed open, and Shen Xinran walked inside. Seeing Ye Yunjian, a flash of panic crossed her eyes, but she quickly regained her composure. Yunjian, you go out first. Ye Yunjian gave me a provocative glance and obediently stood up to leave. I couldn't care less about him, staring deathly at Shen Xinran alone. My voice dry and hoarse. Shen Xinran, why did you give him my bracelet? That is my mom's keepsake. My emotions were agitated, pulling at the wounds all over my body, the pain making cold sweat break out instantly. But Shen Xinran merely smiled indifferently, walking to the bedside and reaching out to touch my face. Since you didn't want to apologize, I had to compensate him on your behalf. You've also suffered these past few days, so let's count this matter as settled. It's just a bracelet. However many you want in the future, I'll buy them for you, okay? Her tone was gentle, yet her every word implied it was all for my own good. I only found it utterly disgusting, my heart feeling as if a huge hole had been brutally gouged out, with a freezing wind howling inside. So she really was the one who proactively gave it to him. At this moment, I realized with absolute clarity that the Shen Xinran from before would never come back. I twisted my head away forcefully, dodging her hand, and gritted my teeth. It's not okay. That is my thing. You have no right to make decisions for me and give it away. Shen Xinran's expression changed slightly, staring at me. After a long while, she suddenly sighed helplessly. Are you mad? Didn't I say I would buy you another one? If Mom knew she would. Before her words finished falling, the door was violently slammed open. Her assistant rushed in, completely panicked. President Shen, this is bad. Mr. Ye wants to jump off the building, right on the hospital rooftop. He said he was forced into this by the master. Shen Xinran's voice ground to an abrupt halt. She snapped her head around, staring at me with a gloomy gaze. What did you just say to him? She was too anxious to even wait for my answer. Dropping a sentence to her assistant, bring him along, she then dashed out of the ward at a 100-meter sprint speed. I was practically carried by 2 bodyguards as they brought me up to the top floor. Quite a few people had already gathered around the rooftop. The moment I saw the scene clearly, I understood. I understood what Ye Yunjian meant by don't know what else I might do. Ye Yunjian was standing on the edge of the rooftop, his hand tightly clutching my emerald bead bracelet, his fragile figure swaying precariously in the wind. Aran, he spoke with a sob, his voice shrill and tragic. Mr. C said if I don't give the necklace to him, he'll make me die in Boss Wang's bed. But this is something you gave me. I don't want to give it away. Shen Xinran's face turned stark white, and she quickly comforted him. He doesn't dare. With me here, I will protect you forever. Come down, okay? Don't scare me. I looked at that string of beads suspended in mid-air, my heart tightening. That wasn't a prop. That was the only keepsake left by my mom. I broke free from the bodyguards, rushed forward a few steps, and stared deathly at him. If you want to die, you can return the bracelet to me first. See, Shen Xinran barked at me instantly. Shut up. But it was already too late. Ye Yunjian seemed to have received a massive shock. His footsteps stumbled, his hand slipped, and that green emerald bead bracelet fell straight down the building. No, my mind went completely blank. A few seconds later, a clear, crisp sound of shattering jade came from downstairs. The sound felt like the sound of my own heart shattering. Without the slightest hesitation, I turned around to rush downstairs to pick it up. Even if it was broken, I had to pick it back up. But my wrist was deathly grabbed by Shen Xinran Si. Ye Yunjin is about to jump off the building, and you're still provoking him. Do you even care about a living human life? At all. Her eyes were bloodshot. Out of both anxiety and rage, let go of me. I turned back to glare at her, the hatred in my eyes almost spouting out. Shen Xinran was startled by the look in my eyes, but Ye Yunjian let out a timely lament, bringing her focus right back. Ah, Ren, you told me not to mess with Mr. C, and I didn't. But why does he still treat me like this? I just want to live properly. I just want an apology. Just because my family background isn't good, do I deserve to be bullied like this? As he spoke, his feet shifted outward another few fractions, with half of his heels suspended in empty air. Shen Xinran was scared out of her wits, and the heart that had just softened hardened once again. Recalling the past events, her gaze sharpened. Watching Ye Yunjun teetering on the edge, her voice changed pitch out of sheer panic. Don't move. I'll make him apologize to you. Kneeling down and kowtowing are both fine. Don't be impulsive. I'm begging you. Ye Yunjun stopped his footsteps, his voice broken. Really, Shen Xinran replied without any hesitation. The next second, she suddenly raised her leg and kicked fiercely into the back of my knee. My already heavily scarred knee took a heavy blow, and I let out a muffled groan of pain, thudding uncontrollably down to my knees on the ground. The piercing pain left me temporarily unable to speak. I wanted to stand up, but my shoulders were deathly pinned down by Shen Xinran. Ah Yi, her voice echoed above my head, cold and unquestionable. Apologize. A massive wave of humiliation instantly overwhelmed me. The surrounding crowd cast either mocking or curious gazes, piercing into me like needles. I raised my head, looking at her with a fierce gaze. Shen Xinren, I never said those words, and I never did those things. How many times do you want me to repeat myself? Did you forget that I am your husband? Dating for 10 years, married for 3 years. I had never roared at her out of control like this before. Shen Xinren seemed to zone out for a split second. The grip on my shoulders loosened a bit, but the next second the crowd burst into screams. Ye Yunjian had stepped 1 foot completely out. Shen Xinren snapped out of it instantly, her gaze growing cold and hard as iron. CI, this is a human life. Even at a time like this, are you still going to be throwing a tantrum? Her tone was completely written with blame. She didn't look at me anymore, directly ordering her assistant pin him down, make him kowtow and apologize. I was covered in injuries. How could I have any strength left to resist 2 bodyguards? My head was deathly pinned down, one strike after another, slamming my forehead heavily onto the cold, rough concrete ground. I heard my own hoarse and tragic screams, mixing with blood and tears. Shen Xinran, you can't treat me like this. From beginning to end, Shen Xinran never spared me another glance. Her entire attention was on that man who was putting on a show of jumping off the building. By the time Ye Yunjian was finally persuaded and climbed back from the edge with extreme caution, my forehead was already a bloody mess. A warm crimson blur covered my vision. The bodyguards let go of me like tossing aside trash, and the onlookers scattered as if avoiding a plague. While my wife, supporting that man with eyes full of heartache, walked straight past my side. At that moment, all hope turned to ashes. Holding on to my last breath, I used all the strength in my body to speak hoarsely to her retreating figure, Shen Xinran. I will never forgive you for the rest of my life. Shen Xinran's footsteps paused for a moment, as if something had suddenly slipped through her heart, so fast that she couldn't grasp it. She didn't turn around, merely instructing her assistant send him back to the ward, and then left without looking back. The assistant wanted to support me, but I waved his hand away. You go down. I want to be alone for a while. The assistant hesitated for a bit, but left anyway. I didn't know how long I lay on the cold ground until I was the only person left on the rooftop. The night breeze was bone-chilling, and only then did I laboriously crawl up, fumbling my way to the edge of the rooftop, staring futilely at the darkness below the building. I couldn't see anything anymore. I pulled out my phone. The screen was shattered but still functional. I dialed Mother Shen's number. Auntie Shen, my voice terrifyingly calm. Can the plan be moved forward? The other side gave an impatient click of the tongue, but didn't refuse. Tomorrow, I'll send you the address. Good. 20 minutes later, a black car stopped in an empty alley at the hospital's back door. I got inside, and the car drove toward the suburbs. On the way, I sent a final message to the lawyer. He has signed the agreement. I'll trouble you with the follow-up. Then I pulled out the SIM card, snapped it in half, and threw it out the window. The car stopped at the designated location. It was an abandoned winding mountain road with a very deep ravine down below. The driver handed me a bag containing a new ID card, a passport, some cash, and a plane ticket to Canada. The car has already been prepared. In 10 minutes, it will drive itself down. Inside is a prepared corpse, And the fragments of your documents? The driver instructed mechanically. You head down the mountain from this small path. Someone will meet you. I nodded, picked up the bag, and walked into the mountains without looking back. 10 minutes later, a dull, massive sound of an explosion came from far behind. The firelight faintly lit up a small patch of the sky. I didn't turn around. When the sound of the explosion came, Shen Xinran was currently in the hospital's VIP ward, cooing softly to comfort the overly frightened Ye Yunjian. Her chest suddenly throbbed with pain without any warning. She instantly zoned out, and the warm water she was holding in her hand spilled out over a large area. What's wrong? Aran Ye Yunjian snuggled into her embrace, raising his face as he asked in confusion, but Shen Xinran didn't seem to hear him, her eyes completely blank. That inexplicable sense of panic in her heart grew heavier and heavier, and the pressure around her was terrifyingly low. Ye Yunjian's heart sank, thinking she had discovered some flaw. He quickly dialed up his acting skills and started sobbing again. Only at his third call did Shen Xinran snap back to reality. Forcing down her palpitations, she ruffled his hair. It's fine, don't be scared. With me here, no one dares to bully you again. Seeing that she was just spacing out, Ye Yunjian let out a sigh of relief and continued to play his fragile white lotus act. You suddenly stopped talking just now. I thought you regretted it, thinking I'm a burden and didn't want to care about me anymore. As he spoke, his eyes turned red again. If it were before, Shen Xinran would have long held him in her arms with heartache to comfort him. But today she was completely absent-minded, untouched at all. Instead, because of his words, her thoughts drifted back to that inexplicable palpitation just now. It was a very familiar feeling, exactly like on their wedding day 6 years ago, when she learned Siyi had taken the money and run, that kind of world-shattering pain. A wedding where the groom was swapped and the lover went missing became a nightmare she couldn't shake off for the next 3 years. Not until she found Siyi back did this palpitation slowly settle down. What was wrong today? Why did it happen out of nowhere? Her brows furrowed unconsciously, and her palm suddenly went empty. Ye Yunjian pulled his hand back, struggling to get out of bed. Turning his head away from her, his tone filled with grievance and dissatisfaction. Let go. Since President Shen regrets saving me, I'll just stay far away, lest I eyesore you and my brother-in-law. Shen Xinran suddenly snapped back, grabbing him at once, her tone carrying a perfunctoriness she hadn't even noticed herself. All right, stop throwing a tantrum. Wasn't it because I was too tired worrying about you that I spaced out? Just lie down properly and stop making trouble for me. She pressed Ye Yunjian back onto the bed, guarding him until he fell asleep. But the moment his breathing stabilized, Shen Xinran immediately got up, walked outside the ward, and dialed my number. Sorry, the number you dialed is switched off. Switched off, her brows knit together, her heartbeat skipping a beat inexplicably. She immediately called her assistant, but there was only a long ringing tone, with no one answering. Her right eyelid suddenly started twitching wildly, twitching so much that it made her heart race in panic. Her steps involuntarily quickened as she walked toward my ward. The hospital was exceptionally noisy today, from the 3rd floor to the 9th floor. In the elevators and corridors, people gathered in groups of 3 or 5. Gossiping endlessly, their faces filled with shock and curiosity. Shen Xinran had no interest in listening, but the voices still drifted into her ears. Did you see it? Did you see it? The video in the group chat. A car exploded on Jingji Road. Yeah, I watched it. It was terrifying. I heard the person in the car was blown to pieces, and only an ID card was found. Shen Xinran leaned against the corner of the elevator, the corner of her mouth pulling into an impatient sneer. These people just knew how to gossip about others' life and death all day. The elevator doors opened. She raised her hand to push past the crowd, walking swiftly. Excuse me. Just as she stepped out of the elevator, an excited woman's voice came from behind her. Hey, is it this person? Even the ID photo is so handsome. What a pity. Let me see what he's called. See right. The 2 words, see, were like 2 thunderclaps, brutally crashing beside Shen Xinran's ears. Her footsteps froze dead on the spot, and her mind went completely blank in an instant. All the noise faded away, leaving only a sharp ringing in her ears. That woman's voice was infinitely magnified. A few seconds later, she shook her head frantically. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. She turned around violently, looking at the crowd in the elevator that hadn't dispersed yet. Her voice shook uncontrollably. Who did you just say? What's his name? Which characters for C, which characters for Yi? The people behind her were terrified by her savage expression. With a ding, the elevator door slowly closed before her eyes. She subconsciously wanted to reach out to press the button, but her fingertips froze stiffly before touching it. A moment later, she violently withdrew her hand, walking through the corridor with unstable steps. With her head down, her mouth muttered neurotically, I misheard. I definitely misheard. Yi's illness isn't cured yet. The doctor wouldn't discharge him. I told my assistant to watch him. His phone is never turned off. As if grasping at a lifesaver. She kept making excuses for herself, right? He turned off his phone because he must be angry. Angry that I forced him to apologize. He knows I'm most afraid of him disappearing. So afraid that I installed a tracker on his phone. So afraid that I had to check his location every 2 hours. So he changed his tactics, using ghosting to punish me. Holding me hostage until I go crazy with anxiety before he shows up. Using this to blackmail me. Making sure I never upset him again. Chill gradually crept into Shen Xinran's eyes. "Si, you are truly becoming more and more willful and more unreasonable. I made you apologize because you did something wrong. Not only do you refuse to admit your mistake, you even threaten me with the thing I fear most." Thinking of this, Shen Xinran stopped her footsteps, clenching both hands into fists. For the first time, regarding this relationship, she developed a trace of ice-cold suspicion. C seemed to have really changed. No longer that sincere and passionate youth from back then. The current him is good at scheming and malicious, even resorting to such despicable methods. Thinking about it this way, the words in the elevator just now must have been a mistake. There are so many people with the same name. She composed herself, turned around to press the down elevator, pressing down that bit of panic in her heart. And what was pressed down along with it was also her remaining guilt toward me. The elevator doors opened, and she almost ran straight into her assistant, who was rushing out in a panic. President Shen, the assistant's face was stark white. Shen Qinran's brows knit tightly. "Where did you go? Why are you coming up from below? Didn't I tell you to watch the master?" The assistant's lips trembled, his hands and feet cold, his eyes dodging. President Shen, the master, he's gone." Shen Qinran didn't react for a moment. "What do you mean, gone? Speak clearly." Just as the assistant was about to speak, Shen Xinran's phone rang. It was an unknown number. She answered it in a bad mood. "Hello." An ice-cold voice came from the other end. "Hello. May I ask if this is the family of Mr. C? Mr. C, an hour ago, unfortunately passed away in a car explosion accident on Xinjie Road. Please come to the police station immediately to cooperate with the investigation and go through the account cancellation procedures." The phone slipped from her palm and smashed onto the ground, the screen instantly shattering. Shen Xinran's brain stopped working. She, who had always been known for being calm and rational, could not comprehend the meaning of the police's words at this moment. She bent down, wanting to pick up the phone to ask clearly, but her legs went weak and she fell straight onto her knees slamming heavily onto the phone shards. A sharp pain came over her, yet she felt completely numb. She just stubbornly fumbled with the shattered phone, asking the black screen over and over, "Say that again." "Who did you say?" "Hello." Hello. Her voice went from initial calm to trembling, to a practically shrill scream at the end. Her palm was cut open by the glass shards, dripping with blood, yet she remained totally oblivious. Not until the assistant squatted down and called out tremblingly President Shen did she turn her head stiffly like a rusty machine, looking at the assistant. After a long pause, she finally remembered that he seemed to have said something just now. Her voice was as dry as sandpaper friction. "What did you say just now? Who is gone?" "What do you mean, gone?" The assistant had also heard the contents of the phone call. Now scared out of his wits, cold sweat drenched his back. With the master getting into an accident, he could hardly shirk the blame. "Master is gone. Just now he said he wanted to be alone for a while, so I came down first. But I waited a long time and he didn't return to the ward. So I went up to look. There was no one on the rooftop. I searched the whole hospital but couldn't find him. President Shen, it really has nothing to do with me." Before he could finish his words, he was violently pushed to the ground by a hard shove from Shen Xinran. "What do you mean, gone? Didn't I tell you to bring him back? Didn't I tell you to watch him? Didn't I tell you to report to me immediately if anything happened? Why didn't you watch him? Why didn't you tell me immediately when he went missing? Shen Xinran seemed to have gone completely insane, straddling the assistant, smashing punch after punch onto him, until she was pulled away by the medical staff who rushed over upon hearing the noise. Only then did she collapse onto the ground like a pile of mud. The surroundings were a chaotic mess, yet she couldn't hear a single thing, her mind just repeating over and over, "It's fake. It's all fake." How could an explosion suddenly happen in a busy downtown area? C was at the hospital. How could he go to Shinjie Road? Right. They must have teamed up to lie to me. Just like 6 years ago, they want me to give up on Ciyi? That policeman must be someone they hired to pose as one. Thinking this way, her chaotic mind actually settled down a bit in a strange way. Struggling to crawl up, she ran toward my ward with stumbling steps. What if it's a misunderstanding? What if C had already returned to the ward and is waiting for me? Yi Shi slammed the ward door open. It was completely empty. The bedding was so neat it looked as if no one had lived there. She rushed into the bathroom, pulled open the wardrobe, and ripped aside the window curtains, her movements becoming more and more frantic each time, until she turned the tiny ward completely upside down, yet still couldn't find a single trace of my existence. The sound of the door opening came from behind. She turned around in pleasant surprise, only to see the doctor walking in with a new patient. Shen Xinran was stunned, her gaze instantly turning cold as ice. "Doctor, this ward is occupied." The doctor gave her a puzzled look. "No, it's not. The patient staying here this morning passed away in an accident. The ward just became vacant. Passed away in an accident." The doctor's words were like the final straw, crushing all her self-deceiving illusions. Why is everyone telling me that C is dead? Her heart felt like it was being tightly squeezed by an invisible hand, hurting so much that she couldn't breathe. She couldn't control herself from bending over, trying to ease that overwhelming agony. Tears fell in massive drops onto the floor without warning. C is dead. She didn't know who she was asking, but the moment this thought clearly surfaced in her mind, her stomach churned violently. She rushed into the ward's bathroom, leaning over the toilet and vomiting, turning the world upside down, until nothing was left but bitter yellow bile. Raising her head, the woman in the mirror was deathly pale, her eyes deeply sunken, her eyes bloodshot, looking so unfamiliar, like a demon crawling out of hell. She looked exactly like she did on the day I disappeared 6 years ago. No, even more horrifying than that day. As she stared, she suddenly began to laugh foolishly, laughing so violently that she coughed up a mouthful of bright red blood. Turns out his phone being off wasn't him playing hard to get. Something really did happen to him. Yet I was still maliciously speculating about him, resenting him. If only I had noticed something was wrong sooner. If only I hadn't left him all alone on the rooftop. Shen Xinran's heart seemed to have died along with him. A heavy metallic taste of blood filled her throat, which she swallowed back down time and time again. She stayed in the bathroom for a very long time, so long that the sky outside turned completely dark. When she came out, her legs were too numb to feel anything. Like a wandering soul, she took a taxi to the police station. At the entrance of the station, she stood for a long time, lacking the courage to go inside, as if by not going in, I would still be alive in her world. But a familiar police officer recognized her and brought her inside. At the officer's very first sentence, Shen Xinran's heart shuddered violently. She thought she had already accepted it, but hearing those words, her heart still convulsed uncontrollably. After the routine questioning, the police took her to watch the surveillance footage, saying it was to confirm the identity. She was pushed down into a chair like a puppet. The very first second my figure appeared on the screen, her eyes turned red. My forehead still bore the wound left from kowtowing that day, and I walked with a heavy limp, my figure so thin and fragile that it was heartbreaking. Then I got into that car, and the vehicle drove toward the suburbs. Next was the blinding firelight at the moment of the explosion, the rolling thick smoke, and the shattered car body. Shen Xinran violently turned her head away and closed her eyes. The deafening sound of the explosion still pierced into her ears with absolute clarity, bombarding her heart. At that moment, her heartbeat seemed to have truly stopped. Only after a long time did she seem like a drowning person newly rescued, gasping for air in huge gulps. The police pushed a sealed bag in front of her. Inside was an ID card with its edges scorched black from burning, but the photo and identity information were still fairly clear. This was found at the scene. It's confirmed to be him. Please go through the account cancellation procedures. Shen Xinran picked up that ID card, her fingertips trembling. The version of me in the photo had clean features, carrying a gentle smile she hadn't seen in ages. She tightly clutched the ID card in her palm and pressed it against her chest, as if doing so could preserve the last trace of my warmth. She remembered the year she had just found me and brought me back, when I was also afraid of being driven away again, afraid of my parents' absolute rejection, afraid of leaving her once more. I would also grip her hand tightly in my dreams, crying and saying, "Don't make me go." Now it all felt like a lifetime ago. With her head lowered, her tears flowed silently for a very, very long time. Then she raised her head, her throat choking up, her voice incredibly hoarse. "Officer, can I choose not to hand this ID over? I want to take it home." Shen Xinran, who ruled the Jingbei business world, was currently begging a low-ranking police officer with absolute humility. When she left the police station, she was completely in a daze. Just as she walked out the main doors, she was called out to by a close friend who had rushed over. Sinran. Her friend's face was heavy with grief, handing her a tiny sealed bag. "These are the few ashes that could be recovered from the scene. There's only this much. I thought about it and felt I should still give them to you." Sinran looked at that thin layer of grayish-white powder, and the tears she had just stopped poured out fiercely once again. Yi. In the past, I always complained about him being too thin, wanting to feed him to be a bit plumper. Now that he's gone, this tiny bit is all that's left." Trembling all over, she took it and choked out a word of thanks. Her friend stopped her again, shoving a USB flash drive into her hand, her gaze extremely complex. "Also, I managed to dig up some other things. I didn't expect you to love your husband so much, yet you would actually see for yourself. What you do next is up to you." Shen Xinran took the USB drive blankly, not understanding her meaning. Her friend had already been called away by someone else. Clutching the USB drive and that tiny bit of ashes, she got into the car. The moment she got in, Ye Yunjian's call came through. Over the phone came his sweet yet aggrieved voice. "Ran, where did you go? I woke up and didn't see you, and you didn't reply to my messages either. Do you really think I'm a burden? Or did Mr. C say something about me in front of you again?" Knowing that my past wasn't clean, "Enough, Shun Sinran," interrupted in a deep voice. Her tone carried an unprecedented irritation. For some reason, this voice that used to soothe her sounded incredibly piercing and annoying right now. Moreover, she could actually detect a hint of fanning the flames in his words. "No, it must be an illusion. Yunjian is so innocent. I have some things to handle. I'll visit him tomorrow." Without waiting for Ye Yunjian's reply, she hung up the phone immediately. Returning home, every single corner was filled with my traces. My slippers at the entrance, the financial magazines I often read on the couch, the succulents I raised on the balcony, everything still remained exactly the same as the day I was sent to the Red Pavilion. Overwhelmed by a mix of regret and hatred, Shun Xinran slapped herself hard across the face. The crisp sound echoed through the empty house, and her mouth instantly filled with a metallic taste. If only I hadn't been so angry back then and hadn't sent him to that kind of place, our final meeting wouldn't have been at the hospital, nor would it be in such an ugly situation. Even if he did hurt Ye Yunjian, it would have been enough if I just lectured him a bit. How did it come to this? She could never forget the dying state I was in when I was sent to the hospital from the Red Pavilion. The police said it was an accident caused by a fuel leak, which meant she couldn't even find a target for revenge. Clutching that tiny bit of ashes, she curled up on the bedroom bed. The sound of the explosion seemed to still echo in her ears. How much pain must my Yi have been in back then? He was most afraid of pain, frowning for ages just from getting a shot. Yet an explosion is a torture thousands of times worse. She could even imagine how hopeless and terrified I must have been when the car rolled down into the ravine. Yi, how about I go accompany you?" She buried her face in the pillow, her voice muffled and carrying a sob. The massive house was as desolate as a giant tomb, and no one responded to her. Her mind was exhausted, and her body was completely spent. Yet she tossed and turned, unable to fall asleep at all. Only in the late hours of the night did she drift into a daze and have a dream. In the dream, I was still in her arms, smiling gently at her. The next second, the flames consumed me, and I blew into pieces right before her eyes. No, she woke up screaming, drenched in cold sweat. Waking up, she realized the bag of ashes in her arms had slipped to the side at some point. She frantically picked it up and shielded it tightly in her chest. Now completely awake, she couldn't fall back asleep. She suddenly remembered the USB drive her friend had given her. Last night, she didn't get what it meant, but maybe she would know once she took a look. She got up and went to the study, plugging the USB drive into the computer. Clicking open the folder. Inside was a massive collection of photos, videos, bank transfer records, and screenshots of chat logs. As she looked through them piece by piece, screenshot by screenshot, her face grew paler and darker, and the hand holding the mouse began to tremble uncontrollably. By the time she finished reading the last file, she felt as if all her strength had been completely drained, slumping limply into the large leather chair, her eyes blank and filled with disbelief. Turns out I already knew everything. I knew about Ye Yun-jian and the child. I knew the fireworks were low-quality goods deliberately bought by Ye Yun-jian, and their placement was also meticulously calculated, with the target being me. I knew that at the fire scene that day, she chose to leave me behind to save Ye Yun-jian on purpose, causing my wrist fracture and injury. I knew Ye Yun-jian and Wang Qinlan had long colluded, directing and acting out the kidnapping drama themselves, just to frame me. I knew those inhuman tortures in the Red Pavilion were done because Ye Yunjian used her name to bribe those people with money. I knew that string of jade beads was promised to Ye Yunjian by her own mouth. As compensation, I knew Xiaoqiu wasn't his child at all, and that Ye Yunjian had swapped the baby. The so-called truth she dug up, I had already known it all along. In corners she never knew about. I endured so much slander and harm. The dashcam footage inside the USB drive showed that I wanted to go buy her favorite tanghulu from that old established shop, just wanting to make her happy, but by a cruel twist of fate ended up in a car with a fuel leak. Even right before his death, what he was thinking about was still telling her not to be mad. Turns out, tracing everything back to its root, it was all caused by her. She was the one who brought a wolf into the house. She was the one who listened blindly and believed lies. She was the one who time and time again for Ye Yunjian pushed me into the abyss. If it weren't for her, I wouldn't have died. Immense agony and regret submerged her like a tsunami, far more violent than when she first learned of his death during the day, piercing even deeper into her very bones. She raised her hands and covered her face tightly, yet tears still poured out fiercely from between her fingers. Her body convulsed from the violent emotional mood swings. As she wept, she suddenly began to laugh in a low voice, her laughter hoarse and broken, like the mournful cry of a trapped beast. Laughing to the very end, she bit her lip deathly hard, until she tasted the metallic tank of blood, only then squeezing out 3 words filled with pure hatred from between her teeth. Ye Yunjian. Before this, she didn't understand why her friend hesitated to speak, but now she completely got it. Turns out, the shocking contents in that USB drive, the main character was Ye Yunjian all along. Turns out her friend's complex gaze was actually pitying her, mocking her for bringing a wolf into her own house, and being played like a total fool. From the first day she met Ye Yunjian, he had constantly complained to her about how tragic his family of origin was. An alcoholic mother, a domestic abuser father. He claimed he only went to the Red Pavilion out of desperation. She felt soft-hearted, doing everything in her power to help him, redeeming his freedom, sending him to school, giving him a respectable job and life. Even when he said he wanted a family and wanted a child, she didn't hesitate to hurt me just to satisfy him. But she never thought that this man who appeared so kind and weak in front of her would be so hideous and disgusting under his skin. She had clearly warned him many times to stay in his place, that I was her husband. He agreed completely on the surface, but behind her back, he kept sending intimate photos to trigger me. I didn't lie. I didn't do those things. I never said those words. The fireworks were Ye Yunjian's deliberate plot. The incident with President Wang was his own self-directed drama. The abuse at the Red Pavilion was ordered by him. Even Xiaoqiu was secretly swapped by him, but what about her? She was utterly blind, her heart completely clouded. She believed every single one of Ye Yunjian's tears, every single one of his tearful complaints. To vent his anger for him, she had sent me into hell. She even forced me in front of everyone to kowtow and apologize to the enemy who destroyed my mother's relic. Shen Xinran watched the surveillance video, where I was beaten until I coughed up blood in the red pavilion, put on chains, and burned with cigarette butts. She couldn't watch any further, violently slamming the laptop shut. Her heart ached so much it was about to explode. Guilt and heartache were like two dull knives, repeatedly hacking away at her. She didn't even need to watch to guess that it would only get more brutal later on. Without the protection of being Shen Xinran's husband, what kind of horrors would I have faced in the red pavilion? She didn't dare to imagine. And the mastermind behind all of this was Ye Yunjian. No, not just Ye Yunjian. There was also her Shen Xinran. She was the accomplice who deserved to die the most. If she hadn't sent me to the red pavilion, I wouldn't have been heavily injured and hospitalized, wouldn't have met with an accident because I wanted to buy Tanghulu, and I wouldn't have left this world. It was all her fault. Shen Xinran slumped in the chair, weeping uncontrollably. Her tears seemed to have run dry, yet her heart was still dripping blood. Aside from the pain, what churned in her chest was a sky-turning rage, fury that made her want to hack Ye Yunjian into 1,000 pieces right now, and make him be buried alive with me. Before this, she had never once doubted Ye Yunjian, because the image he displayed was always that of a gentleman, a pitiful, innocent, and kind guy. But the files inside the USB drive showed that his parents were actually honest, hard-working farmers who worked themselves to the bone to pay for his school, yet he despised them for being poor and didn't even go back to see them once when they fell seriously ill and died. The funeral was even funded by the villagers pulling money together. His entering the red pavilion was not because he was forced by life, but because he was vain, greedy, and wanted fast money. He approached her, copied me, and calculated every single move, all just to climb the social ladder for wealth. And she had actually believed all of his absolute garbage lies. Boundless despair completely enveloped her. Her tears seemed to have already run dry, yet the wound on her heart was still gushing out blood. She sat crying in the study for the entire night, with only one single thought left in her mind, becoming clearer and clearer, and colder and colder. Ye Yunjian, I will never let you off the hook. When the sky was just turning bright, only then did she drift into a daze, slumping onto the desk to sleep. She hadn't slept for long before being woken up by her phone ringing. It was Ye Yunjian, his voice as magnetic as always, carrying just the right amount of grievance and green tea acting. Ah, Ran, do you not want me anymore? Did Mr. C talk trash about me in front of you again? I swear I really didn't go out of my way to provoke him. If he really can't tolerate my existence, I should just take Xiaoqiu and leave. His voice dropped, sounding completely full of disappointment. The corner of Shen Xinran's mouth curled into a freezing cold smirk. This was the first time she had ever felt so clearly just how fake, dramatic, and forced Ye Yunjian's tone of voice was. All right then, she said flatly. The other side of the phone was clearly stunned for a moment. Aran. What do you mean by that? Shen Xinran could almost picture his shocked, yet desperately trying to stay composed face right now. I'm just kidding. Shen Xinran's tone shifted, bringing a hint of the laziness and grogginess of someone who had just woken up. I just woke up, so I was a bit out of it. What's up? Ye Yunjian clearly let out a massive sigh of relief, his tone returning to that clingy sweetness. Ah, Ran, don't scare me like this in the future. I'll take it seriously. It's nothing. It's just that you haven't come by at all, so I was scared you hated me. When are you coming to the hospital to see me? Shen Xinran glanced at the time, rapidly calculating in her mind, I'm a bit busy today. If you're doing fine, handle the hospital discharge by yourself first. She paused, her tone becoming a bit suggestive. Tonight, I'll take you out to the club to have some fun. Remember to dress up a bit handsomer. The word club made Ye Yunjian's voice light up instantly. The club Shen Xinran spoke of could only be one place, the Red Pavilion. That was the place where he used to work, and also the place where he suffered cold shoulders and total humiliation. Last time, he used Shen Xinran's power to boss those people around. They flattered him on the surface, but behind his back, they mocked him for acting like a powerhouse on borrowed time, even turning things around to milk him for money. This time he was going to make them take a good look at whether he, Ye Yunjian, had truly made it to the top. Alright. The excitement in his voice could barely be hidden. Then I'll see you tonight. Listening to his impatient tone, the chill in the depths of Shen Xinren's eyes grew even heavier. She also started to look forward to it, looking forward to watching him fall back into the abyss, kneeling on the ground begging for mercy and repenting to me. She was going to make him pay the most agonizingly brutal price for everything he had done. Hanging up the phone, Shen Xinran's eyes were still red and swollen. She dug out an exquisite sterling silver locket pendant, carefully placing that tiny bit of ashes inside, wearing it around her neck, pressing it tightly against her heart. Next, she took a few strands of Xiaoqiu's hair and went to the hospital to find that close friend Aji to run a paternity test. The results came out very quickly. Xiaoqiu shared absolutely zero blood relation with her. Without a single shred of hesitation, she immediately ordered people to send Xiaoqiu to the apartment Ye Yunjian was renting. After finishing all of this, she contacted that close friend of hers at the police station. No matter how dirty that cesspool of a place was, it was time to thoroughly clean it out, and it was time for a change of ownership. In the evening, when Shen Xinren arrived at the entrance of the Red Pavilion, Ye Yunjian was already waiting there. He had clearly dressed up meticulously, wearing a flashy pink suit, his hair combed slick and shiny. Seeing Shen Xinren get out of the car, his eyes lit up, and he immediately came up to grab her arm. Ah ran, but Shen Xinren dodged him without leaving a trace, saying flatly, "Let's go in." Ye Yunjian's smile froze for a moment. Seeing people around throwing glances as if watching a drama play out, a flash of resentment crossed his eyes, and he quickly took a few steps to keep up. Ah Ran, what's wrong with you today? Are you in a bad mood? He asked, probing Bottle. Shen Xinran didn't answer, walking straight into the deafeningly noisy venue. Ye Yunjian felt that Shen Xinran was exceptionally strange today. From the phone call in the morning to the dodging just now, everything felt off. The strangest part was, Shen Xinran always loved quietness and despised noise and chaos. Whenever she came to a club before, she would always go straight into the secret VIP room on the very top floor. But today, she actually sat down at the most eye-catching booth in the main hall. Ye Yunjian inexplicably felt an ominous premonition rise in his heart, leaving him restless. But no matter how much he racked his brain, he couldn't find any slip-ups he had made. In the end, he blamed all of this on me. It must be that dead man. Blowing pillow talk in her ear again. Looks like the lesson at the Red Pavilion last time wasn't severe enough. Next time, I must make things even more comfortable for him. Thinking like this, he straightened his posture again, tidied up his clothes, and sat down beside Shen Xinran with an arrogant stance. Seeing those former co-workers who used to mock him, now casting envious or jealous looks over, he tilted his chin up even higher. Very soon, some male hosts who recognized Shen Xinran huddled over, doing everything they could to sell themselves, while hinting at all kinds of services. Ye Yunjian sneered in his heart, silently cursing them for not knowing their place. He leaned closer to Shen Xinran, using a charitable tone to say, "Ah Ran, this is a former friend of mine. Seeing how hard he's working, why don't you buy 2 bottles of wine to help boost his sales performance?" He waited for Shen Xinran to do what she usually did, give him feiz, and casually spend a fortune. Shen Xinran glanced at that male host and nodded, "Sure." Ye Yunjian was smug in his heart. Just as he was about to flex a bit more, he heard Shen Xinran continue to tell that male host, "Open 2 bottles of your most expensive wine, and put it on Mr. Ye Yunjian's tab." The male host was stunned for a moment, then covered his mouth and laughed, the mockery in his eyes almost completely undisguised. Ye Yunjian's face instantly changed. "Aran, what do you mean by this? If I did something to make you mad, just say it directly. There's no need to humiliate me like this, right?" His eyes turned red on command, showing a stubborn yet aggrieved look. In the past, this trick worked every single time. But today Shen Xinran just gave him a flat look, the corner of her mouth curling into a cold smile. "Not at all. Aren't I backing you up right now?" Seeing her smile look normal, Ye Yunjin was half believing and half doubting, thinking that maybe he was just overthinking it. Following that, one after another of his former acquaintances came over to pitch sales. Shen Xinran rejected no one, always gifting expensive wine in Ye Yunjian's name, even fruit platters or massive stacks of cash. Ye Yunjian felt his heart ache for the money at first, but on second thought, Shen Xinran said she was backing him up, so she would definitely settle the bill for him in the end. Thus he grew bolder and bolder. When Shen Xinran ordered a 100,000 yuan exclusive dance and casually threw a thick stack of cash toward the dancer, such a flex made Ye Yunjian feel completely intoxicated. Ye Yunjian was completely hyped up now. He stood up on the sofa and shouted to the entire venue, "Drink up, everyone! Tonight, everything is on me, Ye Yunjian." The entire venue instantly erupted. Those co-workers who used to look down on him, the harsh managers, and even guests who had given him a hard time, all swarmed over at this moment, holding up their glasses and spouting all kinds of flattering compliments. "Brother Yunjian is a total beast. I'm rolling with you from now on. Young Master Ye is so generous. We were blind back then. Please be the bigger man." Ye Yunjian soaked it all in, feeling completely on cloud nine. He even, copying the exact way those people used to bully him, pressed cash underneath the hard liquor and forced those who wanted to suck up to him to crawl on the floor like dogs to drink it up. Watching them scramble in such a pathetic and miserable state, Ye Yunjian doubled over laughing until his voice went hoarse. Only under the occasionally flashing strobe lights could one see the tears squeezed out from his laughter. Those tears held the absolute thrill of sweet revenge, or perhaps even a trace of desolation that he himself hadn't realized. Amidst all this wild revelry and flattery, only Shen Xinran remained quietly seated in the booth, her fingertips gently rubbing the silver locket pendant on her chest, her eyes deep and dark, like a wolf patiently waiting for its prey to step into the trap. Having had his fill of the hype, Ye Yunjian returned to her side. Reeking heavily of alcohol, with a hazy gaze, he stared at Shen Xinran's fair calves beneath her skirt, a wicked desire surging in his heart. "Ah, Ran," he leaned in, his hand restlessly finding its way onto her waist, his voice suggestive, "Let's head back." As he spoke, he grabbed Shen Xinran's hand, trying to pull it toward his body. Shen Xinran looked down at him, with nothing but churning disgust in her heart. How did she ever think this man was pitiful before? Looking at his face now, she only found it vulgar and repulsive. She yanked her hand back, but Ye Yunjian, fueled by the alcohol, pressed down on the back of her head, trying to force a kiss on her. Shen Xinran violently turned her head to dodge it and shoved him away with brute force. Caught completely off guard, Ye Yunjian almost fell off the sofa, which instantly snapped him out of most of his drunkenness. A surge of rage flared up inside him. All night long, Shen Xinran had been resisting his intimacy, making him lose face in front of everyone several times. Now that the money was spent and the clout was given, what kind of pure act was she still putting on here? A ruthless look flashed across his eyes. Just as he was about to blow up, Shen Xinran stood up first, smoothed out her skirt, and said flatly, "Then let's go. Settle the bill." Ye Yunjian was stunned, then became overjoyed, thinking she was finally willing to go with him, so he hurriedly followed. After just 2 steps, his path was blocked by 2 large bouncers. "Sir, you haven't paid yet." Ye Yunjian was startled by the block, then flew into a raging fury. "Paid for what? Open your dog eyes and see exactly who I am. I'm Shen Xinran's man, move." The bouncer had a professional fake smile plastered on his face as he handed over a tablet, which showed a densely packed itemized bill. "It doesn't matter whose man you are. If you buy things you have to pay, your total bill tonight is 2,537,800 yuan. Will that be card or cash?" Ye Yunjin slapped the tablet away with one hand, pointing at Shen Xinran, who had already reached the door. "Are you deaf? Put it on her tab." Shen Xinran, Shen Xinran. Hearing her name, Shen Xinran turned around, looking completely puzzled. What's wrong? Ye Yunjian felt like he had found his lifeline, and immediately complained, "Ah, Ran, they're bullying me, they're blocking me, and won't let me leave. I already said I'm your man." He tilted his chin up, looking smugly at the bouncers, expecting Shen Xinran to shield him behind her back just like before. But Shen Xinran walked over, took the tablet to look at it, and then shoved it back into Ye Yunjian's hands. Yunjian stopped making a scene. "Hurry up and settle the bill. I'm tired and want to go back to rest." She let out a yawn, a look of exhaustion appearing on her face. Ye Yunjian's eyes widened in utter disbelief. "Aran, what do you mean by this? Aren't you paying the bill?" Shen Xinran spread her hands, looking completely innocent. "Did I say that? I remember I kept saying to put it on Mr. Ye Yunjian's tab." Her smile remained the same, but Ye Yunjian read a freezing cold mocking sneer from it. At this moment, he finally completely understood. Everything tonight was a deliberate setup. Deliberately acting cold to him, deliberately hyping him up, and deliberately letting him squander money without limits. All just to watch him make a fool of himself right now. Ye Yunjian's face instantly turned ash pale, his lips trembling as he desperately suppressed his rage. Aran, stop joking around. It's already 3 o'clock. Didn't we agree to go back and see Xiaoqiu together tomorrow? Shen Xinran actually burst out laughing because of these words. See Xiaoqiu? Her gaze turned ice cold. You go see him yourself. He's not even my child. So what is there to see? The blood in Ye Yunjian's entire body seemed to freeze instantly, leaving his hands and feet ice cold. She knew everything. Aran. He wanted to quibble and wanted to explain, but Shen Xinran had already lost all patience. She instructed the Red Pavilion manager, who had rushed over Manager Chen. I remember that your establishment has a special way of hosting guests who try to skip out on their bills. For a big client like Mr. Ye here, who spent over 2 million, how should he be handled? Manager Chen was a slick old-timer who instantly understood Shen Xinran's meaning. Nodding and bowing, don't worry, President Shen. We know the rules. We guarantee you'll be satisfied. Please take a step over to the VIP viewing area. Shen Xinran nodded with satisfaction, about to leave with the attendant. Ye Yunjian completely panicked. He knew the Red Pavilion's methods for dealing with bill skippers. It was simply not meant for humans to endure. Shen Xinran, you can't leave. You can't treat me like this. He screamed at the top of his lungs, trying to rush over but being pinned down deathly tight by the bouncers. The commotion here attracted the attention of the whole venue, and even the music was turned down. But Shen Xinran didn't stop her footsteps. Looking at her retreating figure, sheer terror completely submerged Ye Yunjian. He knew Shen Xinran was playing for keeps now. Shen Xinran, did C say something to you? Those are all lies. I had my reasons, let me explain. A crisp, loud slap landed heavily on Ye Yunjian's face. It was Shen Xinran who had turned back around to strike him. Earlier tonight, the moment he first mentioned the name C, her fury had already reached its absolute peak. Ye Yunjian, even at this point you're still acting. Shen Xinran glared at him, her gaze like a weapon dipped in poison. I warned you to stay away from Yi, but you didn't listen. Everything now is your own doing. From now on, I won't believe a single word out of your mouth. Finishing her words, she raised her foot and kicked him hard in the chest. Waving at the security guards, drag him away. Ye Yunjian seemed to be dazed from the beating. It wasn't until he was dragged onto the center stage, with the spotlight beaming down on his pale face, that he suddenly snapped out of it, spitting out a mouthful of bloody spit mixed with a tooth. The security guards wouldn't be polite to him at all. Their fists and kicks rained down on his body without mercy. The dull thuds of punches smashing against his bones made him feel in his daze, as if he had returned to the year he was first sold into the Red Pavilion. His clothes were ripped to shreds, and a cold blade pressed against his ankle. No, what you're doing is against the law. I can sue you guys. A shrill scream echoed through the entire venue as his hamstrings and Achilles tendons were cleanly and swiftly severed. Ye Yunjian collapsed on the stage like a puddle of mud, completely losing all ability to fight back. Instead of being scared, the crowd below erupted into even more excited howling. Keep going, keep going. Ye Yunjian dragged his broken body like a worm, crawling toward the VIP viewing area where Shen Xinran was sitting, leaving behind a glaring trail of blood. Aran, save me. I beg you for the sake of me following you for 3 years. Save me. His face was covered in tears and snot, crying in an incredibly miserable state. A few female clients in the audience felt a pang of sympathy and claimed they would help him pay the bill. But upon hearing the figure of 2.53 million, they all went silent. Shen Xinran leaned back lazily against the comfortable sofa, swirling the wine glass in her hand, her gaze completely indifferent, as if she were watching a clumsy performance that had nothing to do with her. Save you? She leaned forward. If I save you, can you give my Yi back to me? Ye Yunjian didn't catch her underlying meaning, thinking Si had just run away from home again. He immediately grabbed onto this like a last straw, nodding his head frantically. I can, as long as you save me, I'll immediately go apologize to Mr. Si. I'll kneel and kowtow to him. I swear I'll never appear in front of you guys again, and I'll never ruin your family anymore. He spoke incredibly fast and urgently, utterly terrified that Shen Xinran would back out. But after listening, Shen Xinran just let out a disdainful mocking sneer, staring blankly into empty space, where Siyi's shadow seemed to linger. Sure, her voice was as soft as a sigh. Then go apologize to him on the way to the afterlife. Ye Yunjian's tearful begging stopped dead. He was dazed as if he hadn't heard clearly. What did you say? Siyi is dead. The word dead was like a heavy sledgehammer, smashing violently into Shen Xinren's heart. Her gaze instantly turned sinisterly cold. Manager Chen is the punishment for bill skippers here. Always this gentle, to the point where you still let him spout so much nonsense. Manager Chen on the side broke into a cold sweat, hurriedly forced a smile, and said, President Shen, please calm your anger. The main course is coming up right now. He clapped his hands, and several staff members pushed up a massive iron cage. Locked inside the cage was a massive Tibetan Mastiff. The low growling of the Tibetan Mastiff echoed through the microphone, spreading across the entire venue. Its foul, smelly drool dripped down. The crowd was startled at first, but then erupted into even more fanatical cheers. Beast fight, beast fight, beast fight. Ye Yunjian stared dead at the Tibetan Mastiff, his face turning as pale as paper, unable to even let out a scream anymore. He wanted to escape but was terrified of rolling off the stage and falling to his death. But with his hamstrings and Achilles tendons completely severed, even a single twitch brought a heart-wrenching pain. He could only curl his body up in vain, letting out a beast-like whimper. The staff members blankly unlocked the cage. The Tibetan Mastiff's glowing green eyes instantly locked onto the prey in the center of the stage. Ye Yunjian was roughly picked up and thrown into the cage. No, his despairing roar was drowned out by the deafening music and cheers. Ye Yunjian passed out only to be shaken awake again by intense pain. Fresh blood dyed the bottom of the cage red. Just as the Tibetan Mastiff's fangs were about to bite into his throat, a crisp gunshot rang out. The Tibetan Mastiff wailed and fell into a pool of blood. The music stopped abruptly. Blinding powerful police flashlights illuminated the entire venue. Police, nobody move. Put your hands on your heads and squat down. A large squad of fully armed police officers rushed inside. The crowd that was just reveling in madness was now struck with panic, fleeing like rats. But the entrances and exits had already been sealed off. The leading police officer walked toward Shen Xinran, his expression serious but nodding slightly. President Shen, thanks for your cooperation. This time we can wipe out this entire den in one fell swoop. Shen Xinran nodded absent-mindedly, getting up to leave. From behind her came Ye Yunjian's feeble voice, which was almost inaudible. His breath like a thin thread ran. I was wrong. Give me another chance. I can take care of you instead of Siyi. He spoke with absolute sincerity. But Shen Xinran could see right through that last trace of greed for wealth and power hidden deep in his eyes. She stopped her footsteps without turning back, her voice ice cold. Save those words for the police. With all these charges added up, it's enough to keep you inside until you're old. Finishing her words, she stepped on her high heels and resolutely left this disgusting place. Behind her was Ye Yunjian's completely hopeless weeping. The aftermath was exactly as she expected. The red pavilion was completely shut down because Ye Yunjian stole jewelry worth tens of millions from Shen Xinren's safe, conspired with Wang Qinlan to set up a scam, and instigated others to commit intentional assault, resulting in severe injury. He faced multiple combined charges. He was sentenced to life imprisonment. Word has it that he still remains restless in prison, clamoring all day, "The Shen family will come save me." His psychiatric evaluation did reveal serious mental issues, but Shen Xinran had long stopped caring about all of this. She went right back to being that workaholic President Shen with eyes only for work. Except there was just one difference. She left work on time every day, then carried a flask of wine to the cemetery in the suburbs of Jingbei. In front of my cenotaph, she would sit for the entire night. She often drank until she fell asleep directly on the cold stone steps. As time went on, the outside world came to know that President Shen had a husband whom she loved to the bone but who died young. But no one dared mention him. He was Shen Xinren's trigger word, an unspoken taboo in the Jingbei business circle. 3 years later, in the meeting room, an important multinational cooperative project was being discussed. The new secretary Xiaolin was diligently reporting on the coordination status. President Shen regarding the Canadian partner, CE Capital's President CE. President CE replied over there, hoping to move the meeting originally scheduled for this afternoon to tomorrow afternoon. What do you think? As soon as the name CE came out, the entire meeting room instantly fell deathly silent. You could hear a pin drop. All the executives held their breath, stealthily looking up at the woman in the main seat. Xiaolin also instantly realized she had misspoke, her face turning pale in a flash. She was just reading off the data in her hands, completely failing to connect the partner's name with that legendary taboo. It's over. Is her job completely gone? Would she even be blacklisted from the entire industry? Everyone waited for Shen Xinran's thunderous rage. Shen Xinran's fingers holding the pen curled up imperceptibly, but it was only for a split second. She raised her eyes, her gaze calmly sweeping across everyone, before finally landing on Xiaolin's pale face. Her tone didn't have a single ripple. Understood. Reply to them that I'm not free tomorrow afternoon, nor the day after. Put this project on hold for now. Meeting adjourned. Finishing her words, she closed the folder and was the first to get up and leave. She didn't fly into a rage, nor did she fire the secretary. This made all the gossips who were waiting to see if the taboo was real deeply disappointed. Looks like rumors are just rumors after all. President Shen has long moved on. They didn't see Shen Xinran's eyes, trembling slightly when she turned around. Nor did they see her eyes instantly turning bloodshot after she returned to her top floor office and locked the door. She collapsed into her chair, her hands shaking as she pulled out that silver locket from her collar, the one she never took off. Opening the locket, inside lay that tiny bit of ash-white bone ash. She touched it gently with her fingertips, the icy sensation making her entire body shudder. Another 3 years have passed. During these 3 years, everyone kept tight-lipped about that name, never bringing it up. She had also followed along in self-deception, pretending she had long forgotten. But it wasn't until someone accidentally broke this rule that the yearning and pain suppressed for many years crushed all her defenses like a bursting dam. Only then did she realize that during these 3 years, she hadn't forgotten that name for a single moment. He hadn't appeared before her for 3 years now. Not even someone with the exact same first and last name. Yet somehow, right on the day before our wedding anniversary, one actually appeared. Shen Xinran could only chalk it up to the other party's bad luck. They picked the wrong name, and they also picked the wrong time. After the lunch break, she calmed her emotions down. Using the intercom to call her secretary, she notified them cancel the cooperation with Canadian CE Capital. The Shen Group doesn't need unpunctual partners. The secretary Xiaolin's voice sounded a bit awkward. But President Shen, CE Capital's President CE has already arrived at the originally scheduled time. This morning, after I relayed the message that you're not free tomorrow or the day after, President Xi's side said they would stick to the original plan. Right now, he's already waiting in the lounge. Shen Xinran's brow furrowed tightly. She didn't like people who went back and forth on their words. But since the other party had already arrived, out of basic business etiquette, it wouldn't hurt to meet. However, cooperation was absolutely out of the question. Have him come over then. Yes, ma'am. A moment later, there was a knock on the office door. The secretary pushed open the door and entered. President Shen, President CE from CE Capital has arrived. Shen Xinran was looking down at a document, not lifting her head, and only pointed at the chair opposite her in a businesslike manner. President CE, please take a seat. I didn't sit down, nor did I speak. The office fell into a dead silence. Shen Xinran sensed something was off, and finally raised her head. The instant her gaze brushed against my face, the Mont Blanc pen in her hand fell with a click, rolling a few times across the solid wood desktop. She looked as if she had been hit by a freezing spell, her pupils suddenly contracting, her breathing coming to a halt, and her entire body freezing up in the spacious chair. Yi. Her voice was dry and hoarse, so soft it was almost inaudible, carrying an unbelievable tremble. She didn't dare blink, and didn't even dare breathe. Utterly terrified that with one tiny movement, this absurd illusion in front of her would dissipate. It had been 3 years. During countless midnights when she woke from dreams, she would always dream that I hadn't died, that we were still together, and that we even had a child. But every time she snapped awake, There was only a cold bed and an empty room. That kind of loss and despair was something she had experienced far too many times. So at this moment, even though her heart was pounding so fast it felt like it would explode, she didn't move at all, only staring fixedly at the person before her. Finally, I made a move, nodding slightly, a professional business smile appearing on my face as I extended my hand. Hello, President Shen. I am Siyi, the project manager for Siyi Capital. Shen Xinran acted as if she hadn't heard, nor did she see that extended hand. Supporting herself on the desktop, she slowly stood up, her footsteps slightly unsteady as she walked around the massive office desk, approaching step by step. This wasn't a dream. The touch and the warmth were both so real. But 3 years ago, she had brought back the bone ash herself. Then who was this person in front of her? Plastic surgery mimicry. A corporate spy. Countless assumptions flashed through her mind in an instant. If that were the case, she would make this incredibly audacious person pay the most painful price. She stood still right in front of me, her gaze scanning my face inch by inch, and then her line of sight locked onto the ring finger of my left hand. There was a tiny light brown mole right there. The position, the size, and the shape were exactly the same as Siyi's. All the blood in Shen Shinran's body seemed to flow backward at this very moment. All her rationality, suspicions, and calculations completely collapsed. Yi, she could no longer control herself, lunging forward fiercely to hug me tight, using all her strength as if she wanted to squeeze me into her very bones. You're not dead. You're really not dead. This is wonderful. This is just wonderful. I knew it. I just knew it. She spoke incoherently. He spoke incoherently. Tears instantly soaked the fabric of his expensive suit. Where have you been these past 3 years? Did someone threaten you and force you to leave again? Tell me, no one can hurt you anymore. No one in the entire Jingbei can touch you even a single bit. The moment he lunged forward, my body turned as stiff as iron. I didn't hug him back, but instead raised my hand and pushed him away with force. President Shen, you have the wrong person. Please show some self-respect. Shen Shinran stumbled from the push, taking 2 steps back before raising his head, his face covered in tears. Yet a light of pure ecstasy burned in his eyes. No, I haven't mistaken you. You are my Yi. I remember the mole on your hand. I remember the tone of your voice. I remember everything about you. He eagerly stepped forward, trying to grab me again. Tell me, was that explosion back then a fake? Did my mother force you again? Don't worry. Things are different now. I'm the head of the Shen family, and no one can separate us ever again. I took a step back, completely avoiding his touch, my brow furrowing slightly. President Shen, if you don't want to talk about business, then I don't think there's any need for us to meet. I picked up the documents on the desk and turned to leave. My wife is still waiting for me downstairs. He suddenly grabbed my arm, his fingernails almost digging into the fabric of my suit. Wife Yi? You're lying to me, right? You're just mad at me, right? His voice trembled violently, carrying a humble, begging tone. I know everything that happened back then. I sent Ye Yunjin to prison, and the Red Pavilion is finished too. Everyone who ever hurt you has paid the price. Don't be afraid. No one will ever get in our way again. He tilted his face up, looking at me through tear-filled eyes, trying to find a single trace of familiar tenderness or softening on my face. I looked at him, suddenly finding it a bit laughable. I lowered my eyes, my gaze falling on his hand that was gripping my arm tightly, and spoke indifferently. Then what about you? Shen Shinran was stunned, but then he seemed to understand something, a resolute light erupting in his eyes. He let go of me, turned around and rushed behind the office desk, fiercely pulling open a drawer. Inside, there surprisingly lay a sharp, unsheathed tactical dagger. It was a blade he kept for self-defense, but had never actually used. Without the slightest hesitation, he stabbed it hard into his own left arm. Blood gushed out instantly, dyeing the white sleeve of his shirt red. His face and lips lost color at a speed visible to the naked eye, and fine cold sweat broke out on his forehead. Yet he didn't even furrow his brow. Gritting his teeth, he fiercely pulled the knife out, and under my shocked gaze stabbed down hard once more. The second stab was deeper and even more brutal. He let out a painful groan, his body swaying a bit, yet he forced himself to stand firm. Then he raised his head, an almost frenzied smile actually appearing on his face. As he looked at me, I can pay you back. Ah Yi, whatever you want, I can give it to you. Dragging his blood-soaked arm, he walked toward me step by step, his gaze terrifyingly obsessive. I can even give you my life, as long as you don't leave me again. I looked at the gruesome wound on his arm, the blood that kept gushing out, and that reckless madness on his face, but my heart felt nothing but a cold numbness. When I left, I thought about never meeting again. When I decided to return and face this, I thought about taking back all the grievances and harm I once suffered with interest. But when I truly stood in front of him and saw him in this state, only then did I realize that all that hatred had vanished somewhere along the way. It wasn't because of forgiveness, but because I simply didn't care anymore. I just don't love him anymore. I can't even be bothered to hate him. So no matter what he does, whether it's self-harm or repentance, none of it can stir up any ripples in my heart anymore. I just find it troublesome and laughable. Shen Shinran, I spoke up, my voice calm without a single hint of emotion. I don't want any of it. I paused, then added, and your life, I don't want that either. Shen Xinren looked as if he hadn't heard clearly, or rather, he refused to understand. The frenzied smile on his face froze, and only now did the intense pain from his arm dully register, making his body tremble slightly. Ah Yi, what did you say? His voice was dry and hoarse. What is it that you don't want? I shifted my gaze away, no longer looking at that glaring crimson, my tone completely indifferent. I said, I don't want anything you give me, including your apologies, your compensation, and your life. Why? Shen Xinran asked with a shrill voice, his eyes completely bloodshot. Is it because I wrongfully accused you back then and hurt you? I know I was wrong. I really know I was wrong. Look, he pointed at his blood-soaked arm. I'm paying it back. I am atoning for my sins. What do you want me to do? Just say it. As long as you say it, I'll definitely do it. Don't abandon me, Ah Yi. I'm begging you. Don't abandon me. He stumbled forward, trying to grab me again, but froze abruptly when he saw his own hands covered in blood. Then, like a little child, he frantically wiped his palms hard against his body on that priceless high-end custom suit until his palms were rubbed bright red, yet the bloodstains only smeared into an even larger patch. He extended a fingertip that was barely clean, cautiously trying to touch my sleeve. Let go, in my voice. There was finally a clear trace of helplessness. Shen Xinran's finger froze in midair. I just couldn't understand. Back then, Shen Xinran clearly loved Ye Yunjian so much, loved him enough to sacrifice our child. That was why I chose to back out and let them be together. Why is it that now he acts as if he loves me so much he's losing his mind, even going so far as to send Ye Yunjian to hell? After thinking for a moment, I came to a conclusion. Shen Xinran. I looked at him, my eyes filled with the detached clarity that saw through everything. You actually don't love me at all. You just can't accept that someone who once viewed you as the entire world suddenly stopped loving you one day, withdrawing all their attention and affection, no matter who that person is, as long as they once loved you intensely, and then suddenly walked away. You would react this exact same way? No, it's not like that. Shen Xinran shook his head frantically, tears mixing with cold sweat as they flowed down. I love you. I only love you, Ah Yi. From beginning to end, you're the only person I've ever loved. Then what about Ye Yunjian? I asked back. Shen Xinran was choked up. I was just confused for a moment. I was deceived by him. So, your love is based on the premise of loyalty and deception? Once you believe the other party has betrayed or deceived you, your love will instantly turn into hate, turning into revenge. That was how it went for Ye Yunjian. And perhaps it's the same for me too. No, you and Ye Yunjian are different. Completely different. Shen Xinran was so anxious he spoke incoherently. What I felt for him was pity. It was guilt. What I feel for you is love. An unforgettable, deeply ingrained love. I had already lost any interest in arguing with him, feeling nothing but exhaustion. Whatever you say. I turned around and walked toward the door once more. President Shen, it seems our cooperation can't continue today. Farewell, Ah Yi. Don't leave. Behind me came Shen Xinran's despairing cry, along with the crisp clink of metal hitting the floor. I turned my head and saw Shen Xinran had picked up that blood-stained dagger from the ground. The tip of the knife was pressed against his own heart. His face was as pale as paper, but his eyes were terrifyingly bright, filled with a kind of reckless madness. If I die right here, his voice trembled but carried a fierce edge. Will you finally be willing to listen to me finish my words? Will you be willing to give me another chance? Shen Xinran had no other options. During these 3 years, besides the company, what sustained his will to live was his remorse and longing for me. Whenever the night grew quiet, as he touched that cold bone ash locket, he would always think about the divorce agreement he received at the very end. At that moment, he vaguely guessed that I might no longer want to love him. But guessing was one thing. Seeing the absolute indifference in my eyes was another. He didn't know how I survived that explosion, nor did he know what I went through these past 3 years. But he didn't care anymore as long as I was still alive, as long as I was willing to look at him just one more time and give him another chance, even if it was just out of pity or charity. But right now, this man who used to have his heart and eyes completely filled with him was watching him press the knife tip against his heart, yet his gaze still didn't have a single ripple. Shen Xinran's heart sank into an ice cave bit by bit. He gripped the hilt tightly, his eyes filled with despair. "Ah, Yi, answer me." I watched him in silence, as if watching a boring farce. After a long while, I let out a sigh, a trace of exhausted weariness in my tone. "Shen Xinran, don't be so childish." These words inexplicably overlapped with that line from 3 years ago, when he said to me as I knelt and begged Si, "Don't be so willful." At this very moment, Shen Xinran finally seemed to personally experience the pain I felt back then. He didn't hesitate, dropping the knife in his hand, and chased after me in a stumble. Because of his violent movements, the wound on his left arm bled even more fiercely, dragging a shocking trail of blood across the floor. The employees in the elevator saw his condition and were scared, completely silent. But Shen Xinran completely ignored them. He was only afraid that if he was a step too slow, he would never be able to catch up to that figure again. The moment the elevator doors opened, he rushed right out. His head was spinning, and his stomach was churning violently. He forced himself to endure it, his eyes eagerly searching, and finally, on the plaza in front of the company building, he saw that familiar back view. The sunlight fell on him, coating him in a golden edge of light, yet it made him feel utterly out of reach. The panic deep down was weirdly smoothed out a bit. At the same time, what rose up was a crazy, desperate thought. As long as Yi can still be by my side, even if I have to tie him up or use force, even if he hates me to the bone, I'll accept it. He pulled out his phone, wanting to call someone to intercept, but the instant he looked up, his pupils contracted sharply. "Watch out," he screamed out, using all his strength to rush violently toward my direction. I heard the screams and wind behind me, and just as I wanted to turn around, I was fiercely pushed away by a massive force. I stumbled for a few steps before standing firm. A piercing pain came from my left wrist. The old injury from my fall on the rooftop 3 years ago seemed to have dislocated again. I frowned and turned my head, wanting to see who it was, only to hear a massive crashing sound. The huge sound of shattering glass mixed with the heavy thud of a heavy object crashing down. A wave of screams erupted across the plaza. My heart suddenly sank. I saw Shen Xinran lying on the ground. Beneath his body, a large puddle of glaring blood spread out rapidly. The wound on his arm burst open, the blood gushing out wildly. And on his forehead, from a smashed flower pot, shards were deeply embedded inside. Blood snaked down his pale cheeks, looking absolutely horrifying. Just now, with that action, he had pushed me away, while he himself got solidly hit by the flower pot falling from high above. "Shen Xinran," I shouted subconsciously, taking a step forward. Right then, a warm and soft hand gently rested on my uninjured right shoulder. "Don't panic, I've already called an ambulance." It was Shushi, my current fiancée, and also a partner at CE Capital. She was waiting for me in the car just now and witnessed the whole thing. Yushi's voice was very flat, carrying a comforting power. I calmed down a bit because of her words. Meanwhile, Shen Xinran, who was lying in a pool of blood, had his eyes glaze over for a moment. But the instant he saw Shushi's hand on my shoulder, he suddenly snapped back into focus, bursting with an icy, piercing hostility. But very quickly, that hostility was masked by weakness and pain. "Ah, Yi, it hurts so much." He stopped looking at Shushi, only looking at me, his voice faint, tears mixing with blood as they flowed down. He knew who Shushi was. A woman's intuition, and the way Shushi looked at me told him everything. But he didn't dare ask. He was afraid that the moment he asked, he would hear the answer he feared most. so he could only show weakness and cry about the pain, using tears and blood to win my last bit of pity, which was perhaps just based on humanitarianism. And my line of sight was indeed drawn by his miserable appearance. In Shen Xinran's heart, a twisted, pathetic sense of success actually arose. He firmly latched onto this moment of soft-heartedness, using all his strength to raise his uninjured right hand, wanting to reach out to me. Ah, Yi, I don't regret it. His breath was weak and intermittent. I just want to ask, if I really die this time, will you still marry me in the next life? His fingertips finally touched my pant leg, tugging it gently, his eyes filled with a desperate expectation and plea. Perhaps because of these words, Shu Shi's gaze shifted slightly. But she didn't say anything, only holding my hand tighter, silently giving me strength. I remained silent, looking at the dying Shen Xinran on the ground, my lips moving slightly, as if I wanted to say something. The urgent siren of the ambulance drew from far to near, breaking this suffocating silence. As if suddenly snapping back to reality, I immediately let go of Shu Shi's hand, taking 2 steps forward but not to help Shen Xinran. Instead, I quickly explained things to the medical staff who had rushed over. Severe injuries to the head and left arm. Massive blood loss needs emergency treatment. The medical staff lifted Shen Xinran onto a stretcher in a well-trained manner. Yet Shen Xinran's gaze was locked dead on me from beginning to end. The nurse asked loudly, "Who among the family is coming with the ambulance?" My footsteps paused for a moment, and then I took a step back, my gaze sweeping across the surrounding company employees. I casually pointed to a department manager who looked quite level-headed. "You go with the ambulance to the hospital and handle the related matters. The company will advance the expenses." The manager who was called out was completely dazed, but not daring to disobey, he hurriedly responded and climbed into the ambulance. The light in Shen Xinran's eyes completely died out the moment I stepped back. I turned around, reached out to wrap my arm around Shu Shi's shoulder beside me, and gently pulled her into my embrace. Lowering my head, I printed a gentle yet clear kiss on her forehead. That scene was like a final poisoned dagger, piercing fiercely through Shen Xinran's heart. The vehicle doors closed, cutting off the line of sight. The ambulance roared away into the distance. Shen Xinran lay in the fast-moving vehicle compartment, his vision turning black in waves. The intense pain in his forehead and the coldness in his arm couldn't compare to the crushing despair in his heart. The corner of his mouth weakly pulled into a self-deprecating arc, and tears slid down silently, mixing into the bloodstains all over his face. He finally understood. He seemed to understand, yet also seemed as if he would never truly understand. That heart which died 3 years ago along with the news of my death completely turned to ashes at this very moment. He knew he had thrown away the most sincere love of his life and had forever lost the man who once valued him more than life itself. He pushed him away and destroyed it all with his own hands. From the moment he was hit, he had been forcing himself to stay awake just to get a few more looks at me. Now he knew he might never get to see him again for the rest of his life. Before completely losing consciousness, his last blurry thought was, "This is fine too, let's just leave it at this." Watching the ambulance disappear around the corner, only then did I let go of Shu Shi. Zhu Shi tilted her face up to look at me, not angry nor asking any probing questions, but just smiling sweetly, as she reached out to smooth my slightly furrowed brow. "President Xi, since you've already officially stamped your approval in public," she wiggled the simple diamond ring on her finger. "Aren't you planning to give me an official title yet?" The tips of my ears turned slightly red, and the hand wrapping around her waist tightened. I lowered my head and gave her a gentle peck on the lips. "I'll give it to you. We'll register our marriage tomorrow. This lifetime and the next are all yours, all right?" Zhu Shi's eyes curved with laughter, and she nodded heavily. On the plaza with people coming and going, our embracing figures looked ordinary yet happy. A year later, I gradually moved the core business of CA Capital from Canada back to the domestic market. Relying on precise vision and swift, decisive methods, we quickly gained a solid foothold in the industry, and I became a famous master investor with the Midas touch. During this period, after returning to Jingbei, I deliberately avoided all news regarding the Shen Group and also reduced hearing any news about Shen Xinran. But some words were still inevitably discussed by others and made their way into my ears. Word has it that a year ago, which was shortly after I returned to the country, Shen Xinran suddenly resigned from his position as president of the Shen Group. At the same time, he liquidated a lot of personal assets and then fully entrusted a massive charitable foundation to a professional institution to manage. On that same day, he quietly vanished from Jingbei. No one knew where he went, and even the Shen family kept their lips tightly sealed. Only in the outer suburbs of Jingbei, inside a remote mountain temple where the incense offerings weren't very popular, did the newly arrived young novices know that a strange female lay Buddhist had moved into the temple. She rented a secluded Zen room in the backyard, paid enough incense money to renovate the entire temple, yet barely ever stepped outside. She didn't speak or socialize, just chanting scriptures and meditating every day. The Buddhist scriptures in front of her were always stained with wet tear tracks, as if repenting for this lifetime and also praying for the next. As if repenting for this lifetime and also praying for the next.